Hello and welcome to Move the Line, more draft discussion. Ryan Noonan here, joined as always by Connor Allen, Scott Smith, special guest today coming in. He's against Friday, 6 days out. This time next week, we'll be talking about draft grades. Hopefully celebrating our wins. But I have to bring in a gentleman today at Fantasy Law Guy. He's been with us before. If you are into the draft at all and you are not following Nick, if you are looking for draft content in the coming years, this man needs a part-time job. So you can obviously see he is educating the youth of America. Nick, welcome back to the show. So glad to have you. What's going on?
Hey, this is awesome. Thank you guys for having me on. It's always a pleasure. I watch this show every single Friday.
Well, I know a lot about what these two think, so we're going to be leaning on you pretty heavily today. Again, I haven't talked to these guys for a couple of days, and things have continued to shift as we know happens this time of year. So we're going to lean heavy on your thoughts. We're going to kind of do what we did the other day. We're going to get through the end, though. We're going to run through a mock draft of where we're standing now, try to do our best to build a consensus. We'll try to tie in some of the betting markets as that continues to take shape, more liquidity there. Connor just launched. I know he's been grinding in the back with Claude for a couple months trying to get some stuff out there. Connor, you want to tell the people what you just went live with today finally over at 4for4?
Yeah, I built a NFL Draft Insider tool that essentially looks at all the different trades happening on Kalshi and Polymarket, which if you think about it are for years we've been looking at Bookmaker and different kinds of steam there. Now you can actually see the trade by trade come in. So I built a feed that you can see that. You can filter by the biggest trades in the last X amount of time, filter it by odds, player, all that stuff. And so ideally, again, this was spurred by last year. Ted McMillan dropped from 12-1 to even an hour before the draft on Bookmaker. And I was like, well, this is crazy. And there were still some 12-1s out there and some stale books. So I tailed for no other reason than a book that's taking $1,000 a click is moving. And, turns out that money matters in this stuff. So ideally you can track some of that in the prediction market stuff. I tweeted out the link and maybe we'll share it today from time to time if there's something applicable, but I think it's a pretty cool tool.
Yeah. Head over to Connor Allen NFL on Twitter. You can find that. It's 4for4. We have that as well. So check it out. Great tool. Again, prediction markets too. We have no amount, that's not been something we've always had on domestics, especially with to go in round one or to be a top 10 pick. Having the ability to lay no on those things is start to see a little bit more liquidity here to be able to pick up and scoop some of that up here in the next week or so.
We talk about bridge jumpers and I think, at the end of the day when I just have a bunch of credit laying around in accounts or even in Kalshi or Polymarket or whatever, I'm just going to rip 95%ers no's and just put the rest of whatever money I have into these random things. So I think it's a sharp move. And we haven't really had the ability to do that prediction market wise until now, because before we wouldn't get the no on things a lot. Now we can bet no top 10 for a guy who's just never been in the mock 10, has no shot of being in the top 10. And it's yeah, you get 2%. It's something I would normally never do, but an hour before the draft, why not?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Bridge jumping, I think, is a fantastic way to phrase it for sure. Those go sideways. Those are could be challenging. Scott, what's going on with you today?
Oh, nothing much, man. Grinding. I was telling Connor before the show, it kind of took me a little while to hit that flow state of getting really excited and getting zoned in. But look, the more information comes out, the more, I've got my draft board set and grinded through all these visits and as much info as I can. So I'm pretty pumped. I'm happy to have Nick on. I think he's the most underrated guy in the mock draft and draft community. He's over there teaching these high schoolers NFL Draft 101, 3 hours out of the day. So I'm ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely love it. So let's get started. Connor, you want to bring up the mock screen? We'll walk back through our process. Nick, I'm going to come to you. I kind of have an understanding of what these guys want to do. I think we can put Mendoza in at one, unless anyone has any, discrepancies there. Nick, two. It's where we started this year. And again, I think you do a really good job and your Twitter's done a really good job at kind of basically, this is such an if this, then that kind of puzzle, right? And I think it obviously starts at two because there's such a trickle down effect of how these scenarios break out. But obviously David Bailey, Arvell Reese, Connor was really early on Arvell Reese. Those bags have been packed, and I think he's trying to come back in and he's balancing those the books here a little bit. But where are you at in terms of what you think is happening with the Jets at pick 2 and all the David Bailey, workout stuff and private meeting, etc.?
I don't have strong conviction on pick 2. It's one that I haven't bet on either side, and it's one that I actually did flip in my mock draft whenever all the big analysts came out and seemed to think per other teams it was Bailey. That phrasing was kind of confusing when they used it. It's like, well, other teams seem to think it's going to be Bailey. They haven't put their stamp on it yet, so I found it to be a little indirect of information here, but if it comes out, I think we'll know more on Monday when they take the weekend, they call their GMs. I think we're going to last Monday before the draft, the week of, that's where we found a lot of information, right? So I'm kind of waiting for that to kind of settle too. And then I think based on kind of my experience on this, that we're going to have a better feel of what happens at 2. And I really think 3 is where this draft's going to end up starting. I really kind of doubt that we're going to go into draft day with this being 50-50. I did recently make a switch in my mock. It seems like I switched to Bailey, and then I kind of just switched back today now to Arvell Reese. He seems to be the favorite there. I'm kind of following the betting market, but I don't have strong conviction either way because I could just see either argument here, whether you want to take the younger player, whether you just want the solid kind of double is that they're saying right now in David Bailey. I put a little more stock on this character stuff though. So if I had to break a tie, I'm going to go with the person who I think fits the better character. And you see rave reviews on Arvell Reese and Dane Brugler's guide and stuff like that. Aaron Glenn's kind of an old school guy. He's going to want someone with maybe the better character. There was some kind of sketchy notes about David Bailey's character in Brugler's guide. So to me, that's going to be the tiebreaker, not to mention the age there. So if we really don't have any other intel coming in, that for me is going to be the tiebreaker. But I have a feeling that, at some point, Jeremiah, all these big guys are going to make their call, and we'll see kind of what happens next week. Where are y'all at?
Where are you at now, Connor?
Yeah, I mean, we got to touch on it. So the canceled visit came out yesterday after our show. I bet on Reese for a while, and it was so wild because I saw the canceled visit, and my mind was immediately all right, this is going to be Arvell Reese minus 200 in 5 minutes. The amount of differences there made me rethink everything. I was like the differences in opinions were oh, well, they're canceling it because they know they're picking David Bailey. And so it made me take a step back and be okay, maybe I'm just too close to, the situation here. And maybe I'm misthinking about not thinking about this correctly. So then I decided, I'm okay, well, let me think about this again and go see if this has ever happened with the top 5 pick in history that they've had a visit planned, canceled it, and then still taking the guy. If anyone has found it, let me know. I'm still looking. There's no precedent for this happening. And so then I was obviously reaching out to people hey, what's up? And in conjunction with this, there's rumblings of a very poor David Bailey interview with the Jets as well in the background. So when you put those two things together, and I had already bet on Reese for a while for a variety of reasons, and you talk about the schematic fits we've talked about, ad nauseum about on here, to me, I just keep adding more Reese. I wake up every day, I look at the board, I look at survey everything, and what's going on, and I'm this is crazy. Plus money, even money, minus 120 is nuts. My bags are packed at this point. I guess I could get out of it if I felt really strongly it was gonna be Bailey, but I think I'm pretty much locked in at this point.
So on Reese Bailey becomes a bridge jumper for Connor in a
the bridge is
theoretical.
I'm halfway down. I'm halfway out on the bridge already. It's tough.
Scott, what did you make from the? I kind of agree with Connor. A polarizing announcement, basically, and the market didn't really do anything with it because you very easily could just see two very differentiating opinions, in a matter of seconds based off of what people interpret that to be.
So my logic to the whole situation is that I've been on Arvell Reese from the jump. My second mock draft that I kind of used to give a different look of how things might go. And I even mentioned it that, I kind of put Bailey at number 2 just to mess with Connor with all the bags that he had on Reese. But if you look at the off season and some of the comments that Aaron Glenn has made, he's talked about versatility, and I don't remember who exactly I heard say it, but they were going through and talking about things, and I think there is some argument within David Bailey's tape of being able to stack up against the run, having McDonald on the other side, and possibly having to have Bailey off the field on certain rundowns and some things like that. He's great as a pass rusher, had a historical year. And then you've had the other things about, Aaron Glenn needs somebody that can come in and do this now. Well, I think Arvell Reese can stay on the field every down. You can use him versatile. You can use his versatility in multiple different sets across your base package. Is he going to be the best turn and run guy and cover? Maybe not, but that's not Bailey either. I look at it and I just think with what I've heard Glenn say, and, especially during the draft, is it a situation where the Bailey information was coming out in case you have a team like Arizona that is really high on Bailey and maybe wanted to move up to where the Jets can get an extra pick to move down one spot and still get their guy in Arvell Reese? There's things like that happen all the time during draft season. I feel a little bit more strongly towards the Arvell Reese side of things, that he's going to be the pick, and that's probably who I'm going to have in my mock draft. I just think you kind of hit the perfect momentum of McShay and Schrager and Daniel Jeremiah all coming out on the side of Bailey at 2 based upon some things they heard. And I think that just swung things so far in Bailey's direction, where you never really had a strong confirmation from Jets, especially with all of the local beat reporters that cover the Jets strongly on the Reese side. So I tend to think it's Reese, especially with this issue of the visit getting canceled. And that's kind of where I'll probably be when it comes next Thursday.
And McShay and Jeremiah are already backtracking. McShay today on the show said, right now, like, I texted my guy over the weekend after the canceled visit. He said, yes, we canceled the visit. And then he's like, well, what's up? What's the deal? And he didn't answer. Like, I mean, this is, clear sign. McShay's already like, all right, I'm spooked. Daniel Jeremiah is like, I lean Bailey, but I don't know anymore, basically. So after coming out and be like, it's Bailey, and everything got aggregated and it blew up, and the odds went from Arvell Reese -200 to David Bailey minus whatever 170 or whatever at one point. I mean, we're back down to even. I think this is going to go one direction. If it doesn't, we're going to get close odds, I think, up until the end. And it's going to be a sweaty Thursday. It already is going to be a sweaty Thursday, but, I'm just going to keep adding.
And right now we're sitting at Arvell Reese -130 and David Bailey +115.
Yep.
All right. So before we move on to the mock section, I want to kind of tackle this collectively because, Nick, I want to see where you're at in terms of the impact of what happens at 2 and how that's actually going to impact your pick at 3. Because I think based off of what we've done together collectively, the 3 of us prior to having you on today, is we've all kind of landed on, we had 2 as a different bet, and then, but whoever's left over goes 3 to the Cardinals. Now, again, the Cardinals are a team that have a lot of needs. Offensive lineman's been rumored there. That would make a ton of sense there as well. Right tackle in particular. Are you impacted by what happens at 2 with 3, or are you landing at 3 wherever you are, regardless of what happens with the Jets at 2? Sorry, I think you're muted.
Let's see.
No, I think you unmuted yourself and then muted yourself again because I could hear it in the background for a minute. Yeah,
My bad. I'm good to go right now?
Yep.
All right. Yeah, if we're trying to mix it up for the sake of mixing it up, I actually am kind of on, I don't want to say I'm on Team Malinois there.
I'll pause there, though. I don't want to mix it up to mix it up.
Yeah.
I want to know what you would do, what you're going to mock right now. Like, what do you think is going to happen?
Right now, I have Francis Malinois at 3, and that is because I don't know if it's a sure thing that the Cardinals are going to be able to move back. I think they're going to try to move back. That seems pretty obvious there. I think several teams are going to try to move back. But the Malinois stuff, just kind of reading through the tea leaves, these dominoes are kind of starting to stack here. The Cardinals' offensive line, 58 out of 85 possible starts among their starters last year. They were a very injured offensive line. We don't really know who their right tackle is as of now, whether it's a competition. Wilkinson, Pryor, who's going to start there. It's not going to be either of them, probably not. And then you have a situation where they're rumored to get Ty Simpson later in round 1, maybe early in round 2. I don't think they're going to throw him in there or make that play without having some kind of bookend tackle situation. And even though they expect to re-sign Paris Johnson, he is entering a contract year. So I just think that's worth noting here. They allowed 59 sacks last year. That was 28th in the league. I just feel like Arizona just wants to support their future quarterback, whoever it is, whether it's Simpson or 2027 quarterback in a stacked class. It's probably best to do so with tackles. Now, they may trade down and do it. I could definitely see that happening right now. But they also might not be able to trade down. Maybe they move a couple spots like they did a couple years ago with Paris Johnson. It's a similar vibe to me. So right now I have Malinois going there, Reese 2, Malinois 3, and David Bailey 4. But that is definitely the minority among the mocking community right now.
Let me ask you this. If you were to get, we got concrete info, or you felt, relative concrete info, and you felt that it was going to be David Bailey 2 to the Jets, would you still go Malinois to the Cardinals at 3?
That would actually give me more conviction on this. Okay. And it's tough to mock because it's tough to mock a trade at this point without having further intel. In reality, I really think that Cardinals really do want to trade down, and, you're trying to mock team matches there. So in reality, I think it's not, even 50-50 that they would take Malinois at 3 overall. But to me, I do think that they would prefer David Bailey over Reese. I'm buying the arguments about the ownership or even the fans even kind of getting a little weary or apprehensive about drafting another hybrid player. And I actually don't even care that much whether it's a good argument or not. I just think it's something that probably comes up in the scouting room, and it's something that gives a little bit of trepidation, a little bit of hesitation there because of all their kind of past failures at that kind of thing. At the end of the day, I think they just want a safe pick here. Malinois has had one top 30 visit throughout the entire process without despite a back issue, which is very, very, very rare. Usually you're using top 30 visits on things like back issues to check up. To me, it screams that, I don't know, Arizona is just really interested in them, and no other team's really making movements there.
Yeah, this is an interesting spot there. Connor, are you locked in, still thinking 2-3? Anything Nick had there, put Malinois on your radar there for the Cardinals? I don't know where you're at with that.
I think it could easily be Malinois. I have way less conviction there at 3. I think I'm probably going to have I'm probably going to have Bailey there. But, I think it could easily be Malinois. Could definitely flip before Thursday. And I think because we're talking about this, I think that, I don't know if we want to, get into 4, but I do think that the Titans would take one of Reese or Bailey if they're still there, or Love if they're not there. So it's kind of interesting. I feel more strongly about that than 3. I have no idea at 3. I'm just because I do think they want to trade back, like you said, because thinking about this today, if they trade back, right, they can get the ammo to trade up for Ty Simpson, and it's basically, a wash, right? They can get more ammo there to end up making it and getting the player they wanted at 3, which is Franz Malinois, and get their quarterback. So I think that makes sense. But the question is who trades up? So
yeah,
Scott, you got some ideas?
So look, I think I kind of look at Cardinals, and I think it's Monty Ossenfort's last stand. And I look at it, and I think he does want to move down. The 2 teams that I think would move up would be New Orleans and Kansas City. I think you have Kansas City, if they're really serious about wanting a defensive end edge rusher that they're serious about, they have 2 picks that they can move up if they have a strong reservation about Bailey versus a guy like Ruben Bain going down. Now the Saints, when it comes down to it, I just think Mickey Loomis he's not been scared to trade up. He's not been scared to mortgage future picks for next year's draft to do so. I think when you look at the defense and how Staley has been successful, he needs an explosive edge rusher. I think if it comes down to it right now and the Saints stay at 8, I would tend to lean a little bit more towards Tyson over Bain. But if they have an opportunity to get one of these guys, I think the Saints are going to value Reese a little bit more over Bailey. I think the Saints will at least make a phone call to explore the option and see what it's going to cost to get there. And then it also puts those two teams at 8 and 9 to allow the Cardinals to move down and still be within range to possibly grab Maui Noah if he is their guy, or Spencer Fano. But I think when it comes to Ossenfort, I think he is looking to still grab the right tackle, recoup some extra draft capital. And I think right now the Cardinals make the most sense to the team that I think would be targeted in on a Ty Simpson.
Yeah, and to Scott's
Dallas feels
point,
like a team in that mix too.
Yeah, and to Scott's point, I don't think there's a lot of they could actually get Malinoa at 9. There's not a lot of teams that seem to be in competition. You're looking at the Titans are probably not going to take one. It seems like it seems like the Giants are moving in a direction where they're not going offensive line. The Browns may take one. Like that seems obvious there. I doubt the Commanders do. I doubt the Saints do. And then there's the other one right there. So if they like Fano and Malinoa, it looks like 9's a very attractive spot. And whereas, like Ryan just mentioned, Dallas, there's a big difference between 9 and 12 if they move to Dallas and they can't get those 2 first-round picks. And the big difference is Miami at 11, right? Because Miami's going to take the other one. If Malinoa or Fano is on the board, I personally think that those are going to be at the top of their board at that point. So if you can move to 9, you're way more likely to still be able to get Fano or Malinoa who can slide in immediately.
Yeah, that's the problem with the exercise is there's so many singular triggers that, change player and position, right? It's like, it's not just a 1-for-1, easy cross off this guy and we just go next in line of the position. There are definitely going to be teams that have sizable teardrops, and it's like, well, no, I'd much rather prefer the top of the wide receiver pile than what's available, at old lineman 2 or 3, and that's tricky. So, all right, well, keep the train moving. For the sake of what we're doing here, let's pop in a pick for the Jets at 2. I think we're good with Arvell Reese.
I'm not taking other answers right now. So for the next week,
Totally good with it.
Unless you hear otherwise, I'm locking in Arvell. 3. What do we want to do here? I guess this was like we talked about it. I'm fine either way. I'm probably going to have Bailey, but I think Francis is very much live, and it makes the mock, at least for 4, 5, 6, look a bit different
and terrifying a little bit. To be honest, like it gets real tricky. And if that's
the one thing I would say is that this pick is very important, and I think when we start talking about Tennessee, the way my board is set up for Tennessee right now, I would have them selecting David Bailey over Jeremiah Love. I don't know so much that Arvell Reese, they've had multiple visits with Arvell Reese and David Bailey, but I tend to think that Tennessee would value Bailey a little bit higher for what they want to run. And I have Bailey right now going to the Cardinals because I think they may have trouble finding that trade partner. They may have to come off of what has traditionally been the trade value for this pick for teams moving up. So I think they'll have to not necessarily take pennies on a dollar, but have to discount what they get in return. But, I have Bailey. And if Bailey is not there, that's the pick for me for Tennessee. If Bailey goes at 3, then I think it's Jeremiah Love for Tennessee.
I agree. I echo that sentiment. So how do we want to make this pick? We want to just coin flip or vote on it? I don't know. I mean, it seems like I think us 3 are on probably Bailey here for 3. And it seems like Nick is on Malinoa. We discussed our original scenario on Monday. Let's go with Malinoa here because we already went through this exercise on Monday with Bailey and then Love 4, and then we went from there. I think we should go with Malinoa to play out this alternative because maybe it'll come to some other bets. So let's go with Francis here.
Yeah, I did this today. I did this at a different inflection point at 8-9, where I mixed up a little bit. This could very well happen. And if it does, there's a really sizable trickle down effect. So I do think that the exercise is kind of important to walk through. Now, again, looking at Tennessee and what they've done this offseason, it's still a team that needs defensive line help, without a doubt. They have spent, and through the trade market and in free agency, a lot of offseason resources already on the defensive line. This is why I would be comfortable in some other scenarios where Jeremiah Love would be the pick. Now, David Bailey being available, does mix that up a little bit. That's kind of why I kind of buy into, I guess, kind of what Scott says there, where Reese maybe slides a little bit if he happened to not go 3 in the scenario. Whereas I could still see Tennessee going Jeremiah Love if it's a decision between Reese and Love, if that makes sense, just based off of the hybrid nature of it. So, but yeah, we've already kind of taken care of that. So now that we've had this play out the way that we are, Nick, is this clear to you, like it is to Scott, that David Bailey would be the preference for Tennessee with both Bailey and Love on the board?
It is. I actually agree 100% there. I think that it goes David Bailey. I still think they'd probably take Arvell Reese, but I have less conviction there over Jeremiah Love.
Okay.
I like the argument that Jeremiah Love might put some fans in the seats, a new stadium, that kind of stuff, star, help for your new quarterback. But, man, Robert Saleh, just so many defensive line picks right there. 4 of 5 years in San Francisco. He goes to the Jets, then takes Jermaine Johnson, goes back to the Niners, and then gets Michael Williams. Like everywhere Saleh goes, they just take defensive line in the first round. He wants a stable of rotation there. I think David Bailey, that's probably the guy I think Saleh wants.
They traded already for Jeremiah Johnson to bring him back to Tennessee. Boy, there
Jermaine,
in the DC, Jacob Martin had a nice little back end of the year last year with the Commanders. They brought him into town. John Franklin Meyer, Solomon Thomas, Jordan Elliott. They've been very busy in the offseason adding to the defensive line. So, but again, David Bailey, more of a top tier prospect, kind of, a nice edge rusher to complement Jermaine Johnson as well if they were making. So go ahead, Connor. We can go with David Bailey here. We had that pick to be Jeremiah Love, but this changes things. This also changes what seemed to be pretty clearly to us Sonny Styles at 5 for the Giants. Connor, now we have to kind of maybe have a Styles Jeremiah Love conversation with the Giants. It's kind of how this has kind of transpired.
Yeah, like the last, what has it been, 2 days maybe? I think we had Jordan Renan come out, Giants B reporter basically say that Harbaugh would love to have Jeremiah Love and that he, would basically, force the pick here. I don't know if I buy that, to be honest. I think that Sonny Styles or an offensive lineman is much more Harbaugh style than a guy like Jeremiah Love, even though Jeremiah Love is super talented. There was also some, this is the same show as Peter Schrager and Jordan Renan said that Jordan Tyson's range starts at 5 with Malik Neighbors kind of facing some, offseason injury stuff. Now, again, that doesn't strike me as a John Harbaugh first pick type of, in his new regime type of vibe here. And especially if you're adding an oft injured receiver to a receiving core that is dealing with injuries, I don't know if that's the correct logic either. So I don't buy that. I think in this scenario, I'm probably sticking with Styles, but I don't know, Scott, you got any thoughts here on this? Because again, we've kind of worked ourselves into a different scenario than we were at earlier, but like I would say extremely realistic, like very possible.
Mm-hmm.
So where I have landed on this is I think Joe Shane is a lame duck. I think he's sitting there, and I don't think he's going to have much say-so on this pick. I think it's very much Harbaugh having the last say. The part that I come down to is I think it's Styles or Caleb Downs, and I lean Styles over Caleb Downs because I just think you have a complete profile there as far as the athlete, the unicorn, as far as he tests and things of that nature. Some of the comments that Harbaugh has made about stopping the run. I think Mora will have some say-so, and we've all seen the Hard Knocks, him talking about, having the running back leave, and I don't know where Cam Scatterbu is in his recovery. I don't think Cam Scatterbu would preclude them from taking Jordan Love, but man, I just have a hard time when you start to listen to, all the evaluators break down the talent in this and talk about the few elite guys that they have. So it's either Love or Styles to me. I tend to lean towards Styles in this scenario. I think, the Cowboys are a team that's looking to move up. I don't have the Cowboys in, wanting to move up all the way to 3 under any of these scenarios, just because the information people that I've talked to that are familiar with the Cowboys think that they do not want to give up that pick 20. I think that's what they would have to do to move all the way up to 3. I think, they're in play here at 6, or, depending upon who the Giants take, I think it would be Styles. But I think they're going to have a hard time passing up on Love. But I lean Styles and Caleb Downs.
Yeah, I'm looking at the roster. Styles would make way more sense, thinking about, unless you think that Caleb Downs is generational at the position, and some people do, film better than athletic testing. But just, again, you used some resources in free agency. And Tyler Newbin you took with an early pick in the second round just 2 years ago, has played pretty well. Whereas you have a pretty gaping hole linebacker that you would need. That kind of speaks to like the run the ball, stop the run mantra we've heard out of them so far in the offseason, which I think makes some sense there too. Nick, where are you at with the board as it transpires what the Giants would do at 5 with Love and Styles on the board?
I'm slightly kind of concurring with Scott, but we have a different end result. I agree that they would view Styles and Love over Caleb Downs, but I come to kind of a different conclusion on Jeremiah Love there. That's who I think the Giants would probably take over Styles in this scenario. To me, the best evidence is kind of following their movement in free agency, where Jordan Ronan, who's also kind of been on the Jeremiah Love train here and is kind of a reliable beat for the Giants, he reported that not only were the Giants in on the Kenneth Walker stuff, but they were also trying to acquire Travis Achane as well. And they went for some pretty hefty, contracts there. I think it does jive with the stopping the run, the running the ball for sure with Harbaugh there. I like that aspect philosophically. And I think it speaks to, okay, you have Scatterbo coming off an injury, but he's probably best more of like a change of pace back, or like maybe a closer in the fourth quarter when defenses are tired. And, Tracy's probably a pass catching back, but Jeremiah Love is just kind of a star. I just feel like they need an identity to help Jackson Dart a little bit. In not only passing game, but just kind of give their offense another playmaker outside of Neighbors, who's also coming off an injury. So I have it Jeremiah Love and then Sonny Styles, and then maybe a little gap before maybe another tier there with Caleb Downs.
The tricky part here is really a pretty good linebacker class. I know, Scott, we've been talking about that a little bit offline, where that could be a part of it, right? If they do happen to evaluate one of the other guys that could be going in the early second rounds, that would kind of soften the loss and the need to kind of fill in for Sonny Styles. You know what makes stopping the run harder? Trading your all-pro nose tackle, which it seems like they're about to do too with Dexter Lawrence. So you better be able to run the damn ball pretty well. You're going to need to. Connor, what are your thoughts on Styles, Love, Giants? Again, another tricky trade partner for Dallas if they're looking to trade up. Same things we kind of balked on with the Commanders, with obviously trading within the NFC East.
Yeah, I think Love goes here or 7 if he doesn't go here. So it'd be either 5 or 7 at this point. And then I think at this point I'd probably go Styles, though. I don't think I have too much else. We talked about some other guys, Downs, whatever. It's Styles or Love for me here. I'd probably lean Styles in this scenario.
The one thing that I will say, and it's something that me and Ryan talked about, is look, you start to look at the prospects at the end of the draft and in the round 1 and where the Giants are. And Noonan is huge Jacob Rodriguez fan. And what is the gap between Rodriguez and Bailey here? As athletic as what Sonny Styles is, it's not that Rodriguez tested poorly, and the guy has a nose for the ball to read and react. So for the Giants, do you get a guy like Love and still get a player similar to Sonny Styles and Jacob Rodriguez in that second round, which you should be in range to go ahead and make a move if he falls there? I think that's a serious argument to have. And, I say we go with Love here just to see how this, we've had Styles like mocked here to the Giants. I think there's a good argument to go both ways. And in the back of my head, it's John Mara, just bitching about losing Saquon and not having him in the back of my head.
Exactly.
that ends up coming to me. So I say we're given a little bit of a different look that's still realistic here. You've got some of the beat reporters. I say we go with Love.
All right, I'm fine with that. I will say it's kind of like the 1v1 of, or 2v2 of, would you rather have Sonny Styles and maybe like a Jadarian Price or whatever the backup, or Rodriguez and Jeremiah Love?
I know where Noonan leans.
Yeah, I want Love and Rodriguez.
I think Price is an absolute dog, so I like him, but I get it. Let's go with Love. And then on to pick 6.
Pick 6, interesting, because I think we both, whoever was not the pick there, I think we all think maybe is the pick 7. Last time we did a trade here with Dallas, which I think makes a ton of sense. Digging around, it seems like there's a lot of Cleveland love for Spencer Fano. Now, I don't know that they stick a pick at 6, but Cardinal Tate's available here as well. Again, we've kind of all talked through a few of these scenarios. So, Nick, I want to give you the floor first on Cleveland at 6. Any trade scenarios, or again, considering where the board's at now, what do they do?
I think if Malinois is there, I expect him to be the pick at 6 if he's available. I've also seen the Fano buzz here in Cleveland. I don't know how credible it is, and I think it might be. I could see him making a lot of sense there. Seems like the buzz for Cleveland is, instead of going wide receiver Carnell Tate and then taking a tackle like Lomu at 24, it seems like it's like, okay, tackle is just more pressing, I guess, right now. We're trying to complete this offensive line job, so let's just take the best tackle here. But I go back and forward on this pick all the time. I think Carnell Tate, local product. You have a passing head coach now with Todd Monken coming there. He's going to want to air it out. Their receivers are Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman. Tillman's even in a contract year. Isaiah Bond. I know it's a vacancy at left tackle too, but I think it's just kind of which one do you address now? Which one do you maybe address later or even in round 2? Right today, my lean is Tate, but I've had Fano there for a while, and I could have Malinois too.
Scott, where are you at with this?
Look, I'm looking at my draft board right now, and I have the number one thing on the Browns list is to trade down. I think the Cowboys would love to move up here to number 6, specifically for Sonny Styles. I think talking to the Cowboy sources that I have, he is one of the players that they covet the most. I don't think that the Cowboys would trade up for Caleb Downs. I think the Cowboys are content sticking at 12 and seeing if, a Reuben Bain or Caleb Downs would drop down to them, or even a Mansour Delane. I do, however, think Sonny Styles is a key target to go ahead and move up here to get. And for Cleveland, while they may be high on, Fano or Malinois, look, the drumbeat has been hard for Caden Proctor. The argument against Malinois is that they tend to think that he's strictly a right tackle or maybe even a right guard, whereas I think Cleveland is looking for more of that left side, that blind side tackle with a guy like Caden Proctor, who a move to 12 would still allow them to get a guy like Proctor, or possibly even see Spencer Fano fall down. I think the one team that you're kind of like messing with there is what happens with Miami, when they're on the clock at 11. But I think Dallas is going to be on the phones trying to get up to this pick to get Sonny Styles.
Connor's got the Kalshi board up because Styles at 6, intuitively, it's probably not a popular click because Cleveland owns the 6th pick. They don't necessarily need a running mate for Carson Schlesinger. So it'd be fantastic. It'd be a lot of fun, but not a need for Cleveland. So yeah, look, trading at 15 cents or so on Sonny Styles. Again, speculative because you need the dots to connect. You need the trade to happen. But I think that is a good way, depending on what your aversion to risk is at this time for the draft, portfolio building, grabbing some longer priced, if that, then this scenarios makes some sense depending on, again, your approach to betting overall, Connor.
And the other part of it for Dallas is Washington Styles is on Washington's list as well. And when you start talking about the Giants, the Cowboys, and Washington, they're all kind of on that same player pool. And so this is, an active move to get in front of a division rival and snag a player that they're interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess two things here. The only person would be excited about stacking linebackers would be you, Noonan. Like that would be like the only person in America literally hyped about that. But
a lot
I
of
do
fun to
think
watch the Browns games. I'll tell you that.
I do think though, like when was the last time where we came out of a weekend and 3 analysts mocked the exact same trade and it actually happened? Never. I mean, like
It also very weird that it wasn't just like, 3 randos, right? I don't want to disrespect anybody.
I mean,
it just,
yeah.
it wasn't 3 randos, as I guess.
They all heard the same information for sure. Like over the weekend, it was like whatever, Cowboys are interested in trading up, Browns are interested in trading down. That makes sense for all the reasons that Scott said, plus a couple other. Let's put it in our mock. I don't know. I mean, I get it, and it makes sense on paper. It just seems like that never works out like that in real life. So that's my only pushback. I think if the Browns stick and pick, it's likely one of Tate or Spencer. I think that makes sense. There was early rumblings on Monroe Freeling. I know that they've shown interest in Caden Proctor. Maybe they surprise us all and go with Proctor there. I would not like. I think you could slot in any of those guys. I probably would lean towards an offensive lineman, but and partially because, I mean, the 24th spot's a little bit of a weird teardrop too for both wideout and offensive linemen. You get like either one of those back end tackles with like Max Iannaccio or maybe Caleb Bormu's there, maybe Blake Miller's there. So if you like one of those guys, maybe one's there. Wide receiver, you're looking at maybe Casey Conception, Denzel Boston range. So again, it's like another 2v2. Like, would you like, an offensive lineman that you like, and then maybe a wide receiver, or like vice versa? I don't have that answer, So I think that's exactly what dictates most mocks.
I agree, and I think that's why it's I feel more comfortable making that tackle selection in a scenario where there's the trade down. But you're right. I mean, when you see the common trades, and we're going to start to see a lot of them after the news today with Jacoby Brissett wanting contract. I feel like a lot of people are going to find unique ways to try to find Ty Simpson a home in the first round. And even that, to your point, feels maybe okay, maybe correct, but a little thin, where it's like you just get this consensus around a trade, and like that, the hit rate for those feels so thin, probably even thinner to your point with group consensus making a trade up at 6. So
I might just put Ty Simpson at 32 for my mock draft score, to be honest. Just like have him in the first round. I don't know.
I hate it so much, but I understand the game. I understand the game.
And Jeremiah too, was there's no shot the Seahawks are staying at 32. Basically, I don't know if you guys saw that too. He basically was like adamant that they're moving out. So I might just throw a filler player that I don't know have a place for that just goes there. But I don't know.
Yeah, Ty Simpson 32 to Seattle in the final mock. Lock it up. No questions. It just says 32 on the sheet. Okay. Don't read the mock. Don't read that it says Seattle. Okay. Don't worry about it.
What do we want to do at 6? We could go 6 different directions here.
I know. I'm good throwing in the trade again, to be honest, but let's do Tate. Anyone to push back on Tate?
No, that's fine.
Looks like Nick, you did that in your last mock. Looks like you just did Tate. I'm cheating. It looks like you would agree with the Tate pick to 6 to Cleveland, Nick.
This is I mean, y'all are just such great hosts, basically, that this is actually my current mock, the way you have it. I'm pretty sure it's 6 for 6 on what I currently have. So y'all are just doing a great job kind of accommodating me here right now. I appreciate you guys.
Well, let's go 7 for 7. I think we all agree that in this scenario, it's again, it's only 8-minute timer this year. But I think, the Commanders use 60 seconds here to write Sonny Styles, pass it to whoever needs to run it up, and they go ahead and run that up. I don't think in this scenario we're going to get much pushback from anything else. Scott, I'll give you the floor if you want to disagree, which I don't think you do. There we go. All right. Well, he doesn't disagree.
Look, one thing I'll say is this. I think Washington, I think the apple of their eye is Jeremiah Love. If there's any way that he falls to them, I think he will be the pick. I have Sonny Styles as the option 2 for them. And if both of those players are off the board, if you get Jeremiah Love to 4 and Sonny Styles to the Giants at 5, I think it's going to be Carnell Tate. Washington has done the most work with all of their visits on parsing through these wide receivers. The information that has come out here over the last few days from Adam Peters is that he does not expect them to trade down to try to acquire more draft picks because they need an elite player. So I expect them to stick and pick here. I think the worst case scenario you have for them is if Jeremiah Love, Sonny Styles, and Cornell Tate are all off the board. I don't necessarily think that Caleb Downs this is a team that's as high on Caleb Downs as what some other teams may be, mainly due to the incomplete profile. Adam Peters is at the top of the list as far as drafting high RAS guys. So I'm fine with Sonny Styles here. And I just think that those other two guys that we talk about, Jeremiah Love, Sonny Styles, and Cornell Tate, it's going to be one of those three guys.
If there's any pushback there, I want to see Leo Chanel with a ton of snaps, but if Sonny Styles has to come in and take his reps, yeah. I mean, Commanders get pretty interesting defensively with Sonny Styles there right away, so I can lock that one in, Connor.
Yeah, I mean, so if Tate's there, would you if Tate was there, would you think that they would take Tate? Oh, over anyone else? Like, assume Styles goes at 5, or I don't know. Would you take Tate? You think, or no?
No, I think I would still go ahead and take Sonny Styles. I think they want to get a weapon, for Jaden Daniels, but they've done some work on some other wide receivers in this draft that I think they'll have access to in that third round.
All right. Well, we'll keep it with you, Scott. You've been, I know, plugged in locally with trying to get as much info out of the Saints, talking about them earlier as a viable trade-up candidate, the way this board's fallen for them. A couple of names I know that they're very interested in. We have, obviously, the Jordan Tyson workout stuff today as we tape here on a Friday. Definitely in consideration there. Ruben Bain. We talked about Mansour Delane being an option for them as well. With the board as is, what do you think the Saints would do at 8?
Yeah, I feel like I've been able to beat most of the national guys to the punch by about 2 or 3 days here, especially with some of the stuff. I think one of the questions we had in the chat a little bit earlier was a question about if Cornell Tate was on the board here, do I think they would take Cornell Tate over Jordan Tyson? I do think they would do so. I think because of the injuries, I think they would tend to lean a little bit more towards Tate if he is on the board. But as I said a couple of weeks ago, some of the information that I've got is that the Saints are actually one of the teams that's comfortable with Jordan Tyson's medicals. I think they're going to have a contingency there to work him out today, or at least be at the workout. I think this pick comes down to 2 people. I think it's Ruben Bain and Jordan Tyson. I think Bain maybe doesn't exactly fit some of the athletic profiles that they've gone for in the past. But under this circumstance, I don't want to be long-winded because Nick's down here as well. I think they go Jordan Tyson over Bain.
Nick, what do you got?
That's what I have too as well. It seems like, and yeah, you're right, Scott. I mean, you were a couple of days ahead of this curve here. Nick Underhill, reliable beat for the Saints, supported all of these things. I agree that the Saints, I would be very hard pressed to think that the Saints don't like Cornell Tate, like Ohio State product. It's a big position and need. I think if you're down to Tyson and Bain like we are here, I would do the tiebreaker, not just because of Bain's character stuff and not even because of the arm length. I just think at the end of the day, you need to support Tyler Shuck, right? Right now, the Saints' number 2 receiver is Devon Vele. And a lot of people are assuming just because Olave had a breakout year that he's there, he's set. First, he's in a contract year. They're going to have to pay him big. But secondly, one more concussion, and he's out for significant time. Like, he even spoke last year about retiring. And I'm glad he was able to stay healthy, and I'm glad that's kind of at least put to bed for now. But I just don't think it's that receiver group, I don't think it's as rock solid as, and it's not, right? Tipton or Austin is wide receiver 3. They really struggle with drops and that kind of stuff. You got to see if Tyler Shuck they know he's good, but you got to see if he is great. Like, he's going to build a franchise. And the way you do that is by supporting him with a strong cast there. So tiebreaker, I would say, goes to kind of supporting your quarterback here that you're building around. So that's why I would lean toward Tyson there.
Connor, this is the example I was touching on earlier, just in the instance of, because I agree, the stuff I've been doing the last few mocks has been Tyson 8 off of Scott's stuff and just kind of locking that in. messing around with a Ruben Bain situation at 8 to see how that trickled, down to the rest of the board. And it gets pretty sloppy with some, things you want to do next to 9 with the Chiefs. But where are you at currently, Connor, with the, I guess, Tyson Bain discussion? Or is there anyone else you think is in the mix?
I mean, I'm putting Jordan Tyson there, mainly based on what you guys have said and other information you've been aggregating. I don't have too much to add beyond that. I do think it's worth throwing out some of the prices here. We've seen Jordan Tyson, his odds just like escalate massively. Top 10 pick, people are just hammering the S basically. He's like minus 160, minus 175 to be a top 10 pick. I'm not betting that anymore, but I do think that you can get some interesting odds here. Jordan Tyson's plus 320 still to be 8th pick on DraftKings, plus 420 on FanDuel here to be the 8th overall pick. I think plus 420 is money. I think that's a really good look at this point. Like anything above 4-1, maybe even 3-1, I think is pretty interesting. Because if it's like what Scott's saying, I don't think there's that many guys in contention, right? We're probably looking at I don't know, Bain, Tyson, or Tate.
Yeah. I hate these picks so much. I hate these bets. The Darnell Wright one will always you make a trade to one position. You were directionally correct on the team taking the player, and what Scott's already teased us is the Saints being a viable trade candidate. So what you're trying to do is get Tyson to the Saints. I'd rather take less than the money and bet Saints first position wide receiver or something. I don't currently see on the board, but maybe it's
let's say, is that out there? I mean,
those things are
top 10 pick is minus 160.
That's moved so much in 3 days.
That's crazy to bet it. I think at this point,
I think it was 260 last time we did the show, which is 2 days ago. So I mean, it's been steaming up. Scott, what do you got?
The one other thing I'll say is, shout out to the guys at Established Run. I watched Evan Silva and Anthony Amico, and one of the things that they were on that they talked about that I don't think is a bad look, especially with some of the stuff that you'll probably start to hear coming out. I don't know what it's at. I think it's probably in the plus 600 to 650 range. I don't mind a small sprinkle on Jordan Tyson to be the first wide receiver selected. I think it's a sharp look to make a small play that would have, something good come back. You've had Peter Schrager and some of the other guys put in their mock drafts Tate to Miami or falling past Tyson. So I don't think that's a bad play as well.
Stay Scott. Local. We don't have it on the board. Mansour Delane, not a viable option, I guess, with Bain and Tyson on the board.
I actually think that Delane is kind of the fallback option. I think the one good thing about Delane here, I think the Saints just value these other two positions a little bit more. If all of the guys that they want are off the board, I think Delane will be in the conversation between him and Bain. Specifically, the issue with Delane, I think he's versatile enough to play in both a man and a zone scheme equally well. So I think the Saints, who they have done work on Delane as far as visits and stuff, here both locally, I think at the pro day and even a top 30 visit, I'd have to go back and look. But I do have a little bit of outside in the back of my head with Delane, but I'm strongly on Jordan Tyson here.
Yeah, makes sense. What do you got for us, Connor?
And the interesting thing about Tyson is that whether it's Bain or Tyson, they could go 8 and 9, right? The Chiefs may be in on Bain. We talked about them needing a pass rusher, and the Chiefs, Peter Schrager kind of seemed to suggest, or even I think McShay even corroborated it or substantiated it. He said that the Chiefs being in on Tyson is true. So we could have, if it's Bain Tyson, we could have them, flip flopped or back to back, that kind of thing.
Yeah. For the sake of it, for today, when I put Bain at 8, I went offensive line because you also heard offensive line being talked about with the Chiefs more and more too. That starts to get a little bit, that catches my ear when we've been thinking perhaps corner and an edge. Now if offensive line becomes one of the viable options for the Chiefs too, do they knock that preference out at 9, or do they wait and see if they can thread the needle down at 29? That gets tricky too. So all right, I'm good with Tyson here, Connor. Unless what else you got?
No, let's go with Tyson. I will say, for Scott's point, you mentioned the first wide receiver taken. That's down to plus 225. Would you still like it there, Scott? I don't know if I'm into that at that price.
No, look, and that has gotten steamed from the last probably 17 to 18 hours from what it was. I mean, I expected it to happen with that workout being today, and some of the things that have come out already, basically saying that like at least 5 teams are comfortable with the medicals. I think the Saints are one of them. I think the Chiefs will probably be the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, the Chiefs on the clock at 9 in this scenario. Scott, what do you think we do here? We kind of what Nick said. Is this Ruben Bain, offensive line viability? You basically have heard. I mean, look, we look at the top guys on the board. We've kind of heard at some point the Chiefs being interested, or whether positional or whatnot, on any of these players at the top.
Yeah, I like Bain here. When I've reached out to some of the people I trust as far as the Chiefs, I keep getting pushback on Fano to the Chiefs here at playing right tackle. I don't know why there's such a pushback when you consider, the injury to Patrick Mahomes and trying to keep him upright. But the Chiefs fans and the people that I trust when it comes to the Chiefs are strongly on the Bain or Tyson train here. And then, you've got some other people, national guys that are talent evaluators that are way high on Fano and think Fano should be off the board. So, for me, and one of the other things I even heard today was that, the Chiefs, you've got some Chiefs guys that are strongly think that Caleb Downs will be off the board before now. So I think the Chiefs could go a number of different ways, whether that's a trade up to 3, like we discussed a little bit earlier. For me, in my mock drafts, I kind of lean Bain here because they've just struggled to find a consistent pass rusher coming off the edge.
And Bain definitely fits Spag's style of, again, the guy who doesn't really come off the field. He's not we'll go back to my guy from last year with James Pierce. James Pierce, very much a situational nickel, clear passing down type of edge. Bain's going to be a dog. He's going to play 90% of the snaps. He's going to, set the edge against the run. And it feels like that's the type of Spags guy, like a Karl Loftus. I mean, Karl Loftus is a big body, solid against the run type of edge. And I think Bain is that dude as well. Connor, any thoughts here on what you think the Chiefs would do at 9 as the board sits?
Well, I mean, character concerns are not a problem, as we mentioned before. So yeah, that doesn't matter at all. I think I have Bain in this scenario. I would have Bain. I think the more that we go through it, like a guy like him, I think makes a ton of sense. I do a couple questions for you guys though. So we've talked about like how all the national guys, like Peter Schrager said, like Caleb Downs gonna be gone way before 12, and like he's gonna go inside the top 10 no matter what. Like if you jam in Jordan Tyson, which we did, like where does he go? Like how does he fit? And that's kind of the problem that I've been facing is like those super definitive quotes where in reality, like I don't know, maybe they're just wrong. That's
Downs 9.5 over. Back up. Back on top.
I hedged out. I'm soft. I got out of it. I was like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. It's too much.
I'm still holding.
You're still holding? Wow. I mean, stones of steel, Scott. That's impressive. I'd go Bain here though. I don't know, Noonan, where you're at here as well.
Yeah, I'd go Bain here too. I think you can. I think the drop off from what you're going to get at edge at 29 compared to the drop off at corner is a little bit more severe. Again, I'm a huge Ruben Bain fan. Again, I don't care. I don't want him to have 28-inch arms, but again, you watch him play football, and the 31-inch arms are not a problem whatsoever. Again, is not really built into how he plays and how he wins. Pop him next to Chris Jones, who they love to kick outside. They love to mix and match. I just think that it's a ability for them to really add to the overall talents and, grab a guy like that who should not be a Kansas City Chief based off of, the trajectory of where the Chiefs are and where they'll probably be in the next 5 years again. So Bain for me, without a doubt.
Sweet. Also, we got a question real quick. I guess we can talk about it with the Dolphins pick, the first O-line stuff, because that's like probably the next O-line, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I played around some stuff too. Like, again, if you don't go Maui Noah to 3, like again, Scott's pushing back and hearing this pushback on Fanu, like this is the path I think to Fanu being first offensive lineman is Chiefs 9, and and the Cardinals do something different at 3. That's my opinion. I think they would appreciate the flexibility for him to be able to kick inside or outside, depending on whatever their need is for him. I think sometimes we look at like some of these things like tweener, whether it's Reese or is this guy a tackle or a guard, as like a negative thing. And I think that the NFL doesn't always, some teams in particular, don't look at it as a negative. It just gives them flexibility to look at how the board can fall next year, or look how free agency falls, or here's a guy that we developed that is a better left tackle, and now I'm fine with moving you into to guard. So I don't necessarily see those things as a downfall. I think we're kind of evolving in terms of versatility being better than these tweeners, and I don't know where he's going to play. I think teams have evolved a little bit.
It's interesting because on Bookmaker, Franz Mano is like minus 345. DraftKings FanDuel is closer to like minus 200. Again, this is one of the sharper books, takes more action. So I don't know. I would lean that way. I did take some Spencer first O-line, like a really small amount for like 5-1 way back. I don't think anyone else is really Proctor is like a long shot sprinkle. I don't really know if anyone else really has a chance.
I love when you go first name.
Spencer.
Yeah, it was Francis and Spencer and
Francis. I mean, we're on a first name basis. It's like
You haven't dropped a lot of Monroe. I want some Monroe later when we get there.
Monroe.
Yeah,
I'm a big Max guy.
You big Max? No, you went full on. You took you took his last name.
Well, sometimes I'm feeling ambitious. I'm ready to go into the last name.
All right. Well, we'll get your thoughts on Monroe soon. So I'm there too. I think again, let's lock in Ruben Bain, and then we'll go Nick. Are we still holding the line? No, we went off the board, Nick. We ruined the perfect mock for you because you did not have Ruben Bain 9 of the Chiefs. What did you do for the Chiefs? You did go Spencer Fano, so he did go Fano here, though he would blow up my first offensive lineman picked selection because he did go Francis at 3. So, but I'll give it to you.
To be honest,
you can talk about that and then tell us about 10 for the Bengals.
Yeah, to keep it short about the offensive line, I kind of ended up contradicting my own bets, or hedging, if you will, because I thought Fano, I think Connor said it earlier. I think I saw it at 6-1 a couple weeks ago, and I was like, gosh, I think it's closer to 50-50 that which one goes up. It was right after this back issue kind of came up for Malinois, and I was like, yeah, let me go hit Fano as first OL, like in case this back thing pops up. And the same thing like you kind of saw with Jermod McCoy, you just never know how those medicals are going to pan out. So I thought it was a good value. And then now actually this morning, I took Malinois 3 overall. And at that point, it was plus 750, I think, on Score/ESPN, or formerly known as ESPN Bet. But I think it's dropped down a little to maybe what is it now? I think 650 now. It's still a long shot, like we talked about at 3, but I kind of even canceled out my own bet, if you will, but just different times, I guess. But as far as the Chiefs go, Scott kind of convinced me maybe I should alter the mock to Ruben Bain at Scott if he's hearing negative things with his Chiefs connects here. But to me, the Fano logic there was first, you have the connection with Andy Reid and the Utah head coach. You're going to get extra intel there. And it sounds like this extra intel could be persuasive intel because everything you read on the Brugler Beast about Fano is just like lights out in terms of character about this guy. Like, this guy's like one of the best guys in the draft, leader, all of the above, just every intangible, team captain, et cetera, et cetera. You have the Andy Reid's history with the trenches there. I definitely have seen the pushback that Scott's been talking about among Chiefs fans on Spencer Fano. But I think from a mocking strategy perspective, I think 9 is an interesting spot with him because if you are like Scott and you think the Chiefs could trade with the Cardinals, well, then the Cardinals would be having pick 9 and you wouldn't get the team match right, but you might get if the Cardinals end up taking Fano there at 9, you might get, the slot right and that kind of stuff. So I think strategically he should go around pick 9. So that was one reason I mocked him there, but I could definitely see Ruben Bain or Fano there.
All right, everyone, grab a snack, grab a drink of water. We're through 9 picks. It's been an hour. Okay, so we're not going anywhere. Just to make sure everyone carbo loads. Hit the bathroom if you're listening. Pause. We're in for the long haul. So he has to leave. Gonna go pick up the kids or whatever. We're in it. But hopefully this is really insightful for we're trying to give you all the scenarios and all the things that like Connor said. We're trying to empty the notebooks today as much as we possibly can. 10 to the Bengals. Fascinating. I think we know they have to make a selection defensively. probably make a selection in the secondary defensively. Safety 1, Caleb Downs. Cornerback 1, Mansour Delane, both on the board here, Nick. So I'll let you make the discussion or kind of lead the discussion here on the Bengals.
I'll keep this one brief. I think Caleb Downs would be the selection here in this scenario. There's, I did make, since it's kind of a betting show as well, not just kind of the mock, but I did throw some, I sprinkled some 18-1 Thieneman here based on kind of Joe Goodberry's, I don't want to say recommendation, that's words in his mouth, but based on his ranking, I guess, on his Bengals board. Joe Goodberry's been one of the most reliable guys to kind of follow from a mocking perspective about what the Bengals do. And so 18-1, I thought that was pretty good. I think right now it's 16-1. So I'll let you guys kind of determine if that's still viable or not. But to me, in terms of mocking, Caleb Downs, I think would be the most likely pick here. The needed safety is huge there. The needed defensive back is huge. You have corners, Dax Hill and DJ Turner, and both in contract years. There's not much behind them. Their safety, Jordan Battle, is also in a contract years. And the Bengals like to draft a year ahead. So this just fits a lot from a financial perspective, a team need perspective. And yeah, Caleb Downs is a good player. They need some leadership on that atrocious defense.
Connor, where you at the Bengals?
See, I thought it would be between Delane and Downs. But, Joe Goodberry knows ball, so, and Nick, I think you cited some of the DraftKings prices. FanDuel's got a 27-1 out there still right now on Thieneman 10. I just bet it for the max, which was, $30, but that's fine. That's okay. Which it's probably even less for some other accounts, depending on which account you're using. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. I think it's interesting. I haven't dug too deep into that. I would probably lean towards Downs or Delane here, but I mean, Thieneman's a fun one. I don't know if that's, I think it's kind of a more fun long shot to bet than actually mock, in my opinion. But I mean, hey, I don't think that's a bad take.
Scott, before you run with this, again, this is where like sometimes I'll say my ball knowing gets in the way or it's a help. I'm not quite sure. But I look at this Bengals roster and I look at kind of how it's positioned, and especially like if I go with the safety room in particular. They signed Brian Cook as a free agent safety from the Chiefs, more of a deep, you're going to run cover one. He's more of like a free safety. They have Jordan Battle. They also signed Kyle Duggar. Again, both of those guys they're like the same guy. They're essentially a third linebacker box safety guy. And to me, that's what Thieneman is, right? Like, I think Thieneman could probably play a little bit more. We've talked offline about this. I think that Thieneman is probably more team specific, scheme specific than Caleb Downs, who can play a little bit of all of it. Going Thieneman when you have Duggar and Battle, even in contract years, feels a little redundant to me. When I look at your cornerback room, Dax Hill has played nickel before for them and played actually okay. Last year, they had to force him to the outside. So grabbing Mansour Delane allows you to move Dax Hill into nickel and bridge the gap with your perimeter corner opposite of DJ Turner, who's pretty good. So to me, I look at the roster, and I don't know again if the team's doing it this way, and they're probably thinking more contractually in years down the road. But I love the shifting of how things work by them going Mansour Delane, because again, you solve kind of two things at once. You get, I think, an upgrade at nickel. And I'm okay with you kind of deciding if you want to go with Battle or Duggar in camp to play opposite of Cook, where that gets really convoluted if you draft Caleb Downs. Maybe Caleb Downs has to take nickel snaps, and then you're still keeping Dax Hill on the outside. So that to me is why I would be Delane on this board. So Scott, what do you think?
Look, I've been very torn with this pick because if you trust the national media guys that are talking to the scouts, the coaches, and the GMs, like this is Caleb Downs' floor from what they say. And if people are considering him at 5 and this is his floor, then that's what's been tugging at me for him to be a Bengal. The flip side of that is I've leaned Mansour Delane because I think everything that you just pointed out shifts the defense and puts the Bengals into a stronger position as far as what they are on that back end. You've got some other safeties in this draft class that have been kind of moving up and getting some buzz there in the second round that I think would maybe be an option for the Bengals. But I just think when you start talking about switching everybody around and where Mansour Delane falls in, and then the gap that you're going to have between Mansour Delane and the next cornerback to come off the board is a huge gap for me compared to where you're at with safety. I tend to lean like the same way that you do with a little bit more towards Mansour Delane, but this is a very close call for me. I could see it going either way. I don't have as strong of a feeling as I do on some of the other picks. So I'm comfortable with either one, but I tend to lean a little bit more towards Mansour Delane.
Yeah. Connor, where are you at with the Bengals?
Yeah, I mean,
y'all
that makes
been
sense.
nice enough. Y'all can go with either here. You can go with Scott. I actually think the next Scott. I mean, do you think the Miami Dolphins would take the next? I mean, would take the other one?
Actually, I think, here we still have Fano on the board. I think, Fano would slide right into Miami.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think it's
That's
Dallas
right.
that's really, really sitting on their hands here with this pick, wanting to take whichever other player doesn't go. And I think this is a situation for Dallas that they would be happy with. And I'll kind of hit on Dallas once we get on there with some of the information that I've got as far as their picks. But
It'll be an hour and a half from now, people.
yeah, I mean, look, I'm comfortable going Delane, and it'll roll it right into these next two picks.
Yeah, I think we go Delane. Also, Scott, I think I've just made a decision for myself that I am not considering the Caleb Downs lock to go top 10 Schrager stuff anymore because fuck him. Like I'm you can't listen to everything and value everything. It's like when you zoom out, it's such a vague thing and not like specific at all. Like unless he's talking to a team in the top 10, like how do they know?
So what you're telling me is you manscaped and now that stubble's growing back on your cojones.
Exactly. Yep. 100%. I'm back. I'm locked in. So let's go Delane here. I think that makes Noonan's ball knowing makes a ton of sense. I'm not signed in to make prizes here, Underdog. We love you guys, but not signed in. So I think Delane's the right move. Noonan, that was some great ball knowing here. And 11, I think Scott brought up a good point, right? Fano. I mean, Spencer is. I bet him. I said in their chat he was 22-1 when it opened this morning on FanDuel. Still, I think you can get 6-1, 7-1 if he's there. Some people were like, if he's there, he's the pick. That was like what I heard from the people reporting that. So I think Scott, you alluded to the same thing.
Yeah, I just think that this pick would have come down to Fano or Mansour Delane. I think with Delane off the board, I don't think that the Dolphins are going to have as much of a glaring want for Caleb Downs as what maybe some other teams would. And I think Fano would be the pick.
Yeah, again, we touched on this a little bit the last time. Nicola, you add anything you have here too? Again, we try a new decision-making tree in Miami with Packers ties, versatile Raz athletes in the trenches. I just been the Packers in the first round for a decade. That would always make it really tricky for me to go Downs or Delane here. So I think Fanu is all that perfectly to a T. So pretty clearly for me there. But Nick, what do you have anything here on Miami?
Yeah, it seems like the Dolphins are going in either of those directions. I agree with the analysis there. A couple quotes here. It says the whole back end is competing for their jobs. So I'm going to do everything in my power. If there's a defensive back available who's a stud, I'm going to go get them. That's on the DB side. But then on the offensive line side of the argument, which is the direction we're going here, it's he says, yeah, I like some pieces along the offensive line, left tackle and center. I think there's going to be competition elsewhere. So that's the GM saying basically 3 spots along the offensive line are up for grabs. And Fano's he's known for his versatility. So I like that a lot. And he fits the threshold. So both of them make a lot of sense. We can go with Fano.
It is unquestionably the worst secondary in the league. There is not a strong NFL caliber starter in the group right now. I kind of like Jason Marshall coming out last year. He did get hurt. But again, 5th round pick, not a lot of capital. It's a pretty bad. I mean, it's bad. So again, even it's I don't know, grabbing Mansour Delane. It's like a, Band-Aid on a leg that needs to be amputated. It's pretty bad. He's still going to struggle, let's take the year, solidify the trenches. Let's get good somewhere. then we'll figure out the rest later. And I do like some, to Scott's point, that there's some interesting safety pieces that are available later that could be, kind of worth it for them in day 2. Pretty easy Caleb Downs click here. Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Look, I harped about them trading up if Sonny Styles was on the board. I think that, that would be the pick. Look, under this circumstance, I think they're happy with Caleb Downs coming in here. I reached out to a few people I trust for Cowboys, and another draft person that we talk with a lot is over at Draftplex, Jason Pruitt. He's a huge Cowboys fan. He's in that market, and he tends to think that this would be the case as well. I've reached out to him and a few other people that gave me some pushback on the Dylan Thieneman, like rumors that we've had here. Specifically, I just don't know that he would fit what the Cowboys want to do. I think they would be much happier with Caleb Downs in this scenario. And I look, the way I have everything set up, it's trade up for David Bailey or Arvell Reese or Sonny Styles. Caleb Downs and Ruben Bain are the two people that I think that if they stay packed, they're hoping one of those guys to fall down to them, and Caleb Downs does here. The other piece of it is I just do not believe that the Cowboys want to come off that pick 20. I think they want to keep both first-round picks, and I think they think that they can add a starter here with that second pick that's going to make a big impact on their team in 2026, 2027.
Completely agree. Any pushback on Caleb Downs? We can maybe skip. We got some chalk here, I think, coming up for a couple of picks. Caleb Downs makes sense. We had a shift last time because we had a trade, and then we had Mekhi Lemon off the board. So I think we went Casey Concepcion to kind of mix it up, which is, provocative. But now we see her, Connor. So I like the Concepcion just visually, in that bone white uniform, flanked out with, his 3 receiver sets there. That'd be a lot of fun. But I think Mekhi Lemon's a damn good football player. And just sometimes the chalk does make sense.
Yeah. I mean, he's good. And Puka's offseason was a disaster. Devontae Adams is old. They need more juice. They need a guy who's going to come in and contribute right away. They're still in a win now window. Mekhi Lemon gives them that to be like, I don't know. I mean, 600, 700 yards right off the rip as a rookie would not be that surprising. Maybe a couple touchdowns. So maybe more if Devontae is hurt or Puka, I don't know, decides to pledge allegiance to, like some crazy group of individuals like he has been, over online. So it's a wild time right now. So I think we're looking at Lemon here, or if they like someone else, maybe, but I think Lemon's the pick.
Now, Nick, I'm cheating again. I'm just seeing the numbers. I'm not seeing actually the, teams or trades or anything, but I see a different name next to 13 on your recent mock. Unless our friend is updating the sheet incorrectly, which is possible. But I'll let you take the floor on 13 if you want to mix it up.
I think for the purposes of this mock, we should stick with Lemon because he's the favorite there. I do think that there's a little thing that's giving me a little bit of pause here. And the other day, someone on Twitter actually put me on a mock that Jordan Rodriguez, who covers the Rams very, very well, known to be one of the best beat writers, she mocked Freeling to the Rams. And I tend to follow her word a lot on the Rams, along with like Schrager, of course. But to me, the caveat, though, and the reason why we should probably go with Lemon here is I think Lemon was off the board in that mock. But I found it very interesting that she went with Freeling. It kind of, the reasoning behind it just kind of made me feel like she knew something. And maybe it's nothing. Maybe I'm overthinking it. But I think this pick needs to help Stafford and help him win a Super Bowl. And I kind of dug into it a little to see if there was like some, validity to it. And I kind of noticed that their offensive line, their left guard, their center, and their right guard are all entering contract years. And I know Freeling's a tackle, but then just kind of bodies along the offensive line. And then I also saw that their center is 32 years old and their right guard is 31. So I could easily see Lemon, but I think offensive line might be a little sleeper there. It got to the point where I kind of checked the books and saw how long of a shot it was.
All right. It does matter. I think the Lemon's off the board, but it wouldn't surprise me at all. There's also a scenario where like, yeah, they're free agents. This very much could just be like, we're reset the whole damn thing, after Stafford walks, right? So they're kind of in this win now mode, which makes some sense. Cause again, you get into Jordan Whittington and, was it Katana Mumfield pretty quickly, in terms of, sorry.
No shade on Mumfield. This is.
I like Whittington too. I mean, he's, but again, like, knowing that what's happened in the offseason there, I think you want to be a little bit more assured of what could happen there too. So I've seen some people talk about Sadiq there as well. Like, it just is a big slot. There's so many damn tight ends. So in my mind, that's really hard, but like, I guess it kind of makes sense theoretically. Let's go Lemon, and we'll keep it moving to Baltimore, which I think is a very interesting team to discuss here as well. I think like Vega Ione has been that I think kind of chalk there. Maybe that's moved away. Like anytime that happens, especially early in the process, like I want to give a little credence to it if it's coming from reliable sources. If it's just like we get lazy mocking, then I'm like, I throw my hands up and I'm like, no, let's find reasons why this is not going to be the pick. It's just a team that has a decent amount of needs that you could sell me on a number of things. I think if we had a healthy Drummond McCoy, that would be pretty interesting for the team, but we don't have necessarily a healthy Drummond McCoy. A lot of different ways. Connor, any thoughts here off the top on what do you think the Ravens could do with this board?
For me, it's between Sadiq or Vega Ione. Scott, I think you went a different direction with 14, right? Last time, I think you talked about that, or were you on Ione as well?
No, so like my second mock draft, I kind of play around and just give things like a different look. And there was some rumors that they want to go ahead and play their safeties, Kyle Hamilton, a little bit closer and almost like a hybrid position, almost like a linebacker and kind of a joker position. And so there was some information that Thieneman could be in play there, kind of in that Eric Weddle type of position. But I generally, looking at this team, I think it's between Ione and Sadiq. I tend to lean a little bit more towards Ione because I just have a higher grade on him, and I think Baltimore always just they sit and they just get the best players that fall to them. They talk about Ione basically being the cleanest guard prospect since Quentin Nelson, and they have a need. Look, you put him next to Ronnie Stanley, and that's going to help that offensive line, help Derrick Henry in his older years, help Lamar Jackson. I just think he makes a little bit more sense than taking Sadiq, but that's the two players that I'm firmly deciding between.
Nick, where are you at with Baltimore?
I tend to agree offensive line more than Sadiq. I think Sadiq's fairly in play there as well as Lemon. If he actually makes it past St. Louis. Oh man, Los Angeles. But I actually tend to think that they might go a different direction on the offensive line. I think Baltimore. I'm messing up my cities here. Baltimore, I think they would prefer to draft if the grades are kind of even. I could see them taking offensive tackle like Freeling or Proctor there. Proctor, especially because of those Alabama connections there in that organization, and probably play them at guard, particularly Proctor. I could really see that happening where they play him where Ioane would be, but now they have a Ronnie Stanley potential replacement. He's 32. And I could see that happening, but Vega is definitely on my short list for this team as well. So you have Vega, you have Lemon, you have Sadiq, and Proctor. Those are the top four for me.
If you guys saw the quote, doesn't necessarily tell us anything about the first round, is a little bit interesting. GM Eric DeCosta, and I brought it up because I wanted to make sure I didn't butcher the quote at all. There's a strong chance that we had a couple of tight ends in this draft. Now, that doesn't have to start in day one, doesn't have to start at pick 14, but it's very much it's a position that we are looking at. We lost Isaiah Likely. We don't have, Mark Andrews, a third round pick in 2018. Not old, but not young. Considering it's a position that, they like to run a lot of 12. That to me is a little bit of signal. And again, that could be, a lot of people think this is a solid tight end draft as well. So that very much could be day 2 and day 3 picks. But it's not nothing to me if you're looking to find a home for Sadiq. if you're thinking about people also thinking about like, hey, pass catcher is kind of a sneaky need for Baltimore. I kind of agree with that. This is kind of checking two boxes, right? Sadiq's not in line, hand in the dirt. He's more so big slot type of guy. So I'm fine with Sadiq or Ione, but that kind of caught my attention with the GM saying specifically, we're looking at multiple in this draft.
I think we go with Ione. That's probably where I'm at. I went with Sadiq, and the more that I let it sit there, the more I hated it. So just doesn't.
I did the opposite because I couldn't find a home for Sadiq, and I felt good just putting him in Baltimore and not having to worry about him later on the board.
It felt good.
There's a bunch of homes for Ione later, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it felt good, like getting it done with, but like I hate the fit. Like I just don't like it at all. He just doesn't seem like a Raven to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. I'd say let's go with Ione and keep rolling here.
Let's do it.
Also did have a question here too, because this is another popular spot for McCoy. If we have a question here that we can bring up from at Fantasy Cash Hater. Fantasy Cash has been doing a great job on Twitter, aggregating a bunch of podcasts and stuff. I have a feeling that I know who this is, but not going to dox him here. But he asked, what's Delane cornerback one good to buying the McCoy injury stuff? We've gotten a bunch of reports lately about Jermod McCoy, and some even going as far to say that he might miss time in 2026, which was not initially reported, which would be a massive deal. So I don't know. I think I'm probably still going to have him in this range, like 15 to 20-ish range, but maybe not. I think I started to piece together my final mock, and I had him at like 27 or 28, I think, kind of late 20s there. I think you guys did the same, right?
Yeah, I'll have him later for sure. I'll have him in the first round still, but because I actually think like, I don't know, it's pretty close, but he's really good. I mean, like 2024 tape was awesome. He's big. But again, not healthy. It's not a great sign. Nick, where are you at on the McCoy thing? And then I guess you can start to talk to us about or your thoughts here, I guess, on cornerback one, and then you can roll that into your Tampa Bay thoughts.
I have McCoy in the late teens right now, kind of parsing between 18 with the Vikings and 19 with the Panthers. When there's a lot of uncertainty around these guys, I like to stick them between two teams that could equally take them, so you kind of get partial credit for the range, the player range. It doesn't mess up your whole mock draft. But so right now it's 18 or 19 for me. So that would make Delane a pretty solid bet. That Josh Norris thing the other day, I don't know if y'all saw it though, is giving me a little bit of a pause there. He seemed to suggest there was something underlying about Mansour Delane, but I don't know what it is, and I don't even know if it's there yet. So we can't kind of rely on that at this point.
Speculate on someone else's speculation.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not betting Delane. I'm not betting Delane at like minus 400 or whatever it is now. I would say that's just a pass for me. Based on, some of those rumblings and other stuff.
Okay.
He probably is going to be cornerback one, but all it takes is one team to be like, I like him. And he's not like a top 10 lock by any means, it seems. So like, I don't feel comfortable in that juice unless it's ACC under 6.5, which case, I'm just, again, another bridge jumper.
Bags are packed there too.
Oh yeah.
All right, Nick, 15, Tampa Bay. I think you did some good digging here too. I actually was I was pretty early on Kendrick Falk here, partially because of like some of the Jason like leadership type of stuff. They're like a big character, leadership, draft captains, draft locker room guys. There's a lot of great Kendrick Falk reporting on who he is in that nature. Stylistically, though, doesn't seem to be a great fit for what they do football wise. He's a little bit more big body, like they typically will run, more speed off the edge when you look at how, Yaya Diaby or, even positionally, Kalijah Cansey's a little bit undersized and more of a speed guy up front. So I'm no longer mocking Falk there, but I do still think that defensive end is a pretty good need for them. But you can tell me if I'm wrong, or what do you like Tampa Bay doing here at 15?
It's a huge need. They have Diaby, they have Nelson, and they have Muhammad, like 3 of their 4 snap leaders for their top 3 defensive ends in terms of snaps last year. Like all of them are entering contract years. Cansey Robinson, and Vita Vea, their top 3 defensive tackles in terms of snaps are all entering contract years. So they need to
Muhammad and Robinson are free agent signings, so they signed them for their for the last deal. Yeah.
Okay. So they just have a lot of bodies right there that they're kind of like the room's going to look totally different next year, and yeah, everything you said, I'm in lockstep with Jason Light. I can't get this quote out of my head from last year. He's like, the first thing we do is we take assholes off the board. And it's like, okay, wow. All right. So they care about character a lot there. So I'm looking for the right kind of person there when I'm mocking good character here. And you're definitely mocking like high RAS team as well. I think Connor was the one who kind of put me on 9.58. At least I have in my notes, average RAS in 2016. So I think I got that from Connor's mock draft. But yeah, so to me, Kenyon Sadiq is it used to be Falk, like you said. Buying that he's not a stylistic fit. Ideally, maybe the Bucks could trade down and draft defensive linemen. But to me, Kenyon Sadiq and Vega Ioane are the 2 names that, if it's not going to be defensive line, because it seems too rich at this point, Sadiq and Vega Ioane are the 2 names that are popping up to me as good character fits who would both like help the offense. I know they have Otten there, but I think Sadiq kind of gives them something different. They lost Mike Evans. They need an extra pass catcher. But I also think they could fall in love with Vega, immediately plug him and play him at left guard. And then their right guard, Cody Mock, is a free agent 2027. So I like both of those for the Bucks.
Yep, Sadiq off the board, Scott. We do have we went Vega, right? Sadiq's still here. Sadiq's still here. We put Vega. Yeah, sorry. What are your thoughts on Tampa Bay, Scott?
Well, I think Tampa Bay would love Ione. That's who I've kind of had. If I go Sadiq there, to Baltimore, I think Ione. You can pretty much, flip flop these 2 picks. To me, I don't have a good feel for specifically what Tampa Bay wants to do. I think they need an explosive edge rusher. Is it too early for a guy like Malachi Lawrence? I think he's that next guy that has that explosive traits that maybe Tampa Bay would be looking for over some of these other bigger body guys like, Zion Young or, when we start talking about Falk. I think he could be a fit. But when you start talking about it, we talked about Lawrence going here in the first round. I think this may just be a little bit too far out of range. And then you start talking about what the floor is for Sadiq and some of his athleticism and athletic traits. So I don't mind going Sadiq here. And then, some people are starting to have Jermod McCoy as an out here for Tampa Bay. I just, you don't know. I don't have any information as to whether or not McCoy would be one of the teams, Tampa having McCoy off their board due to medicals. I tend to think you're going to have to discount him a quarter to a half a round down for a team that is going to take him. So I don't mind Sadiq here to Tampa Bay.
Connor, what have you done with Tampa Bay based off of this board? Is this a Sadiq home for you?
I put McCoy, I put Lawrence, and I don't like any of it. So Sadiq sounds good to me. I mean, this is not one that I have a strong lean on. There's certain teams that I feel like, and I think for the sake of time here, as we're at an hour and a half and halfway done.
What?
I think that we I don't know. I mean, Scott and I think Nick are significantly. They have a lot of good notes on maybe a couple other teams, and I have basically like 1 or 2 like really strong leans. I think maybe 2 or 3. The rest of the back half here. But I think we go Sadiq here just for, again, like consistency's sake. I
went Lawrence. This is where I know it's early on Lawrence. I'm not saying no. Keep Sadiq. I'm saying I've gone Lawrence here. I know you went Lawrence here originally. Yeah. I understand some of the sentiment based off of maybe where big boards were in heading into the combine or whatnot. But that I kind of have 2 flag playing guys in this class. And Lawrence is one of them. We'll start to talk about the other one here pretty soon. But I just think Lawrence is fantastic, and I think would make a ton of sense and fits kind of the stylistic needs. So, but I have no problem with Sadiq here again. Partially Sadiq, I just want him off the board because I have trouble finding like where he lands as we get deep down the board. So having him go somewhere, makes sense. I don't have to think about him anymore. So
I mean, just get rid of him, right? Like, I mean, just get him off the board. I don't want to mock him anymore. It's getting
no Messidor for the Bucks. Messidor would be very similar to Kendrick Falk stylistically, bigger bodied. Also, you have a situation where like Messidor is very tricky. We'll probably get to him in a little bit. 25, injury issues, busted, broken bones and feet. It's tough. The 2025 tape is really good, but I think he gets to be a little tricky. And I think you're just going to have some teams just be like, hey, we're going to make a pick here. It's kind of easy to pass on the oft injured 25-year-old versus, the potential upside of someone else that's not maybe that much worse right now and has significantly more potential. And you get into second contracts. Those things matter quite a bit. All right, Nick, wide receiver has been pretty popular for the Jets at 16. What are your thoughts based on the board?
Based on the board here, let's see. So Vega's a name that I could see going to the New York Jets. We had Lemon going already. So, gosh, I don't know if the Jets are actually going to lean into, kind of reaching for a receiver like Cooper here or Denzel Boston, as kind of Tony Pauline reported their interest there. So to me, I'd probably go a different position. Maybe it goes down to the original mocking of Jermod McCoy, right? Maybe that could be an out right there. Maybe it's Dylan Thieneman. But it just doesn't feel like, I don't know. This feels a little rich for Cooper for me.
The Thieneman thing, I'll we can make this what we will. Again, Aaron Glenn used to be in Detroit as a defensive coordinator. He was obviously coaching Brian Branch. Brian Branch advocated heavily for Malachi Moore, who also went to Alabama like Branch did, told Aaron Glenn and company, this is me. This guy can put him anywhere. He's awesome. He's a dog. He had a pretty good rookie year. So they went and it kind of solidified his spot next to him with Minkah Fitzpatrick, and they have Malachi Moore. So I think they feel pretty good about giving Moore some run, at least this year. So I don't think that safety at 16 is necessarily a huge spot for the Jets. And again, that could just be some tea leaf reading, but I know they were pretty excited to get Moore where they got him last year. So look, I mean, we talked about it last time. You make a case for upgrading, an outside corner for Brendan Stevens would make sense for McCoy if they don't have a problem with it. I could also see Cooper because again, look at outside of Garrett Wilson, you get into Adonai Mitchell, Isaiah Williams, Arian Smith. It's pretty ugly at wide receiver there, Connor. Any thoughts on the Jets?
I'm going to throw out some sleeper names here that I think that, in my opinion, I'm going to have probably one of Colton Hood or Chris Johnson probably mocked here. They've talked a lot about, people have kind of said, like in the Schrager mock, people have been like, there's no way he's going that high. Some of the rumblings I've heard and people have been saying is like, well, it's probably one of the big three receivers or maybe some other position basically. So like, to me, that kind of crosses off Cooper 16. And I'm sure they like Omar Cooper, but I don't think they're gonna pick him at 16. So maybe they trade up for him or maybe they trade down and end up getting him. I don't know. But for me at this point, I think they would probably take a corner. Maybe they feel comfortable with McCoy's medicals. I don't think that that's all that likely. So I'm going to go with one of Hood or Chris Johnson.
Scott, what do you got?
Look, I think when you look at the Jets, I think they want receiver. I tend to lean on some of the information. I believe Tony Pauline was one of the other people that reported as well that the Jets like Cooper, but I just don't think they like him at 16. I think they like him more on the back end. I still think it's a little bit early for Denzel Boston. I don't know that Casey Concepcion is a fit here for what they want to do. I think it's all over the board with, the team and what needs they have. Look, if you don't know where the hell you want to go ahead and put Sadiq, maybe this is the place if all the wide receivers are off the board. But, I don't have a problem going McCoy, but I admittedly do not have a good feel for what the Jets are going to do here if all the wide receivers that maybe they covet are off the board and this is where the board falls. I don't think it's Thieneman. As far as like a safety, I tend to agree with you. I think they would look more towards cornerback, and Chris Johnson is a player that they have done their homework on and have had in for a top 30 visit.
It's spicy, Connor. I like it. Let's go Chris Johnson. I think there's some Chris Johnson cornerback 2 buzz going. You know, I'm okay with it. It's a big body prospect. I think they like him.
He has legit outs too, by the way.
That's had 0 interceptions. Sorry.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Kyle.
That's crazy.
It's impressive.
I think he has legit outs at 20 and 21 too. The Steelers took a visit with him, which like means that he's like on their radar. I think Scott, you've mentioned some rumblings that like the Cowboys could have some interest at 20, and then the Jets at 16 if they prefer Chris Johnson over Hood or McCoy is very live. And then there's a couple teams in the back end. So I don't know if I'm laying the first round price. It's like gotten up to minus 180 at this point, but I mean, I kind of think that he's a pretty good bet to go in the first round, to be honest. So I don't know. Maybe if there's something a little closer to even, I'd be interested in it.
Yeah. Pittsburgh would surprise me a little bit, but I don't know. Yeah, I think he's definitely an ascending player. So yeah, I like it. Let's do it. Detroit 17. Nick, going to give the floor to you. I think this is an interesting spot. I mean, you can lay in terms of like laying juice in terms of team to draft position. I don't think there's anything right now bigger on the board than Detroit to go offensive line. It seems to be very chalky. Then we have kind of an inflection point where you've had a couple names that are really, really common here, both Monroe Freeling and Caden Proctor. Monroe and Caden for Connor here. Which do you think they would, do you have a lean what they would do here at 17 if both guys are on the board?
I'm going to stick with Daniel Jeremiah. He was told that the Lions love Proctor. He mocked it in his last draft, even though it was about a month ago. And unlike Freeling, and I'm sure his character is fine, but unlike Freeling, Dane Brugler, I mentioned a couple times, I really kind of rely on the beast for like these character evals. Proctor had some positive stuff that was mentioned. Nothing negative was mentioned about Freeling, but it was just kind of nothing mentioned on his character. Whereas Proctor, you have some weight stuff, but he's been praised for his leadership and that kind of stuff. So I think he fits the culture there. He fits a need there. And I'm with you, Ryan. I think it's Caden Proctor or Monroe Freeling. And I honestly think one's going to go before this. I don't think – I'm of the opinion that these tackles, it's exactly what teams want in this kind of weak draft class. Like someone who could be elite, right, at a premium position, which is rare for this draft class. I think there's a strong chance that Proctor and Freeling are off the board that nobody's really talking about for the Lions. But I definitely think at least one of them's going. So my simple answer is I think they're going to take the other one. I also think Vega Ioane is in play here, especially if both tackles go and teams get greedy on these tackles. I think Ioane is another culture fit there for Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell for sure. So
he screams Lion. Can you see him? Those two take their shirts off and start chest bumping as soon as they draft Vega Ioane. That like feels like a Lion for sure. Yeah,
so I throw him in the mix. Those are the three guys for me.
Yeah, I did a mock today, updating, and it's kind of where I landed on Ioane after skipping the Ravens with it. So yeah, Scott, any leans on Freeling or Proctor?
No, I'm not going to have any pushback. I think it's kind of a toss up between Freeling and Proctor. I tend to mock Freeling a little bit more to Detroit because I think Cleveland has multiple ways to kind of get to Proctor if they decide that they want him. But I don't have any pushback towards Caden Proctor being on the board and being a Detroit pick here.
Yeah, I can go Freeling or Proctor. Connor, you get the pick. You get to push the button.
Lock in Proctor. I think that makes sense. That's what I'm going to have probably my mock. It's chalk. And so is the next one. I mean, I don't know. Dylan Thieneman, 18, is just like mega chalk. We have 14, 16 with Cooper, 17 with Lyons to Proctor, and 18 with Thieneman. More chalky than like pick 6 through 11. Like, how does that even make sense? I have no idea. I don't think have we gone mostly chalk this thing already? Like, I mean, not mostly chalk, but like we did Vega, Lemon, 13. Sadiq's not chalk. There's not chalk. 17 chalk. So I don't know. Maybe we can, afford a little bit of chalk here.
Yeah, then it's going to
you in
tell
on
us
that?
if it's chalk or not at the end too, right? It gives us updated public information. I'm in on Thieneman. I'm in on Emmanuel McNeil Warrant too, because this is a team that uses 3 safeties and they can mix them all up. And I think McNeil Warren can play both, more free safety and box safety. Whereas I think Thieneman I think not that he can't play deep, but like he's a hybrid linebacker, run filler. You want him in the box type of dude. So I like him quite a bit here, and I think that's why it makes sense as chalk. But I don't like Thieneman to Carolina, which I think I've seen a little bit too. That does not make any sense to me. But you could sell me on McNeil Warren there. But again, I'm fine with clicking Thieneman for Minnesota unless anyone has pushback. Do it. Keep it moving.
Done.
Carolina again. We've heard offensive line or pass catcher. That tracks to me. We've heard a little bit more discussion on safety there from Josh Norris, again, local, tied into some of the Carolina stuff. Again, if you have Trayvon Mooring, drafting Thieneman would make very little sense to me. But again, I could be wrong. But again, I think if you think that safety is a need for them, they brought back Nick Scott. But I don't think they expect much of him. I don't think he's a particularly really good football player. So upgrading that position would make sense. But I think offensive line, again, looking at kind of the nature of their future at offensive line, Nick, even their current offensive line situation with Ike Ekwonu getting hurt late in the season, they probably could use an early season left tackle. Maybe someone that had some flexibility to kick into the inside would make sense too. Where have you kind of landed the plane right now on Carolina?
I'm probably I probably think they have a better chance of picking a tackle there than maybe the public or the fans do, because the tackle they signed, Rasheed Walker, it was like a very, very light deal. I think it was 1 year, like $4 million, which is like chump change for a tackle. And then Icky could miss a lot of the season, right? And I think he's in a contract year as well. So their left tackle is far from decided. I like Freeling as an option here if he falls. I'm interested. You kind of gave me your take on Thieneman not going there. But to me, if I were making this selection here, especially with Thieneman going to the Vikings, I'm going to actually stay with my current mock right now, which is Jermod McCoy to the Panthers. They met with him on a top 30 visit. I think this is about where his range is kind of naturally. And I think that, he's a player that they can take a chance on. I like that. Could also go wide receiver for sure. Concepcion, Omar Cooper. I could definitely see them being the pick as well. Yeah.
Scott, any leans on Carolina?
Yeah, so I tend to agree with what Nick just pointed out. I think we've had a lot of discussion about McCoy and the injury and which teams are going to feel comfortable taking him. When you start looking at his visits, Carolina is a team that has done the homework on him. I think that if there's an out for McCoy, it's going to probably be around this. When you started talking about him, maybe going in that 10 to 12 range, the next pick there at 20, would Dallas have, any desire for him? I was told that McCoy's off Dallas's board at 12. That they have him flagged for medicals, and that was before some of the medical stuff came out. Does that mean he's flagged for them, getting them at a discount there at 20? I don't know. I like Freeling. He's kind of my top choice, but I think trying to connect the tea leaves and find a team that is going to be comfortable to take McCoy. Carolina's the team that's probably done the most homework on McCoy. So I like kind of drafting McCoy here and selecting him there to Carolina and getting him off the board and kind of clearing up some of the stuff here later in the draft in first round.
It's interesting. I got to look into more of McCoy playing nickel because it feels like something that would probably have to be a 26 need. Because I think they're okay at perimeter corner. But it doesn't mean that he can't move out there long term. Mike Jackson, pretty good year last year. But again, they could use an upgraded nickel. So yeah, I'm open to the McCoy thing. It's not something I've explored. I would definitely go offensive line here. But Connor, I'll let you make the click.
Yeah, I think Freeling. I think that makes no sense here just for the Panthers based on everything we've heard and what you guys said. If you guys are okay with that.
Yep. Cool.
All right, let's roll Freeling here, and then I think Scott, you can probably just take this one away here. This is Cowboys 20, anyone here on the board? Who did we pick at 12 again? We picked
We went
Caleb
with
Downs.
Caleb Downs.
Okay.
Look, I think one of the players that the Cowboys are very much in on. We already went off the board there to the Jets and Chris Johnson. I think that's a player that they're very interested in. Whenever I start to look and look at what the Cowboys have done, the majority of their visits, if you go and you look at the cornerbacks that have been there, you have both combine and top 30 visits for almost all of these players: Delane, McCoy, Hood, Terrell, Chris Johnson, Cisse, D'Angelo Pons. I mean, all the guys that are there within the first 2 rounds, the Cowboys have met with at least once, most of them twice. So I think that's very much in play here. Look, the national media thinks that the Cowboys are very much in on Keldrick Falk. I've had some pushback, and some people that I trust in the industry seem to think that they may have a higher grade on another one of the defensive ends, Zion Young. I think you can go either way. So I say we go along that defensive line. Let's just go with Keldrick Falk, since you've got the Daniel Jeremiahs and Peter Schrager's of the world going in that direction, and Chris Johnson's already off the board.
So one thing I will tell you is that we do have a couple of things working in Falk's favor, unless you had specifics that were not Falk. Jerry has tended to draft young guys early, and Falk is on the younger side. He also is, in terms of just his current profile, his pass rush stuff isn't great, but he's really solid against the run. Again, think about what they really were trying to do last year, and all the passive aggressive Parsons bullshit about we couldn't stop the run. Falk is kind of the opposite of that type of dude. They've kind of made some splashes with Rashawn Gary to try to grab some pass rushers. So Falk fits. I also just want to say, I'm not mocking him here. This is the start of Jacob Rodriguez territory. They massively need off-ball linebacker. Texas kid, Raz kid, all of it. This is the start of LB2 Jacob Rodriguez. That's all I'm going to say. So I like Kendrick Falk here, but this is Rodriguez to start.
I'm fine with Falk. I mean, Scotty, you're scaring me that if you're they like Zion Young, who's not even a first rounder more, that gives me caution of putting Falk here at 20.
Yeah, look,
I think I'm going to put Chris Johnson here, but I mean, just,
when it comes down to it, you've got, there's information flowing, multiple spots. For me, I would tend to lean a little bit more towards the Kendrick Falk, even though I've had some pushback and say that they like Zion Young more. I think when you start to look at it, and everything that I've heard is that, Kendrick Falk is going to interview well. I think teams and GMs are going to like what you have in a young kid who's a hard worker. Some of the tape's a little bit inconsistent as far as, his sack numbers and stuff like that. But I think when you look at Dallas tends to meet with the guys that they draft. They have a top 30 visit here with them. I think they've actually met with them twice. So I think I'm comfortable here with Falk over, an Akeem Mesidor, over a little bit of a Zion Young that I'm gonna have to dig into a bit more. But you've had the Peter Schrager's, Daniel Jeremiah's, and other guys, connect Falk here. So I'm comfortable with him being the pick.
TJ Parker, did they meet with Parker at all?
Nope, not that I have.
All right. I think we go Falk. What do you guys think?
I like Falk. I'll lock it up. And it feels like a win for the Cowboys coming out of the draft, right? They, addressed 2 defensive positions, 2 starters. They should feel probably pretty good about that with all that they have need wise. All right, Nick, give it to you for Pittsburgh. It looks like your recent mock does have the person available. You could talk me through that or any other considerations you would have here for the Steelers at 21.
Yeah, definitely. For me, it's really between wide receiver 3 here behind Pittman and Metcalf versus left tackle of the future. Kind of admitting defeat on the Broderick Jones pick there. For what it's worth, PFF graded him 57 overall last year, and he's entering a contract year. And they also have a left guard spot pretty vacant as well. So you're talking about left side of the offensive line, or you're talking about wide receiver. Reliable beat. Jerry Dulac's been kind of banging the drum for wide receiver. Sorry, I should say pass catcher here, because he's kind of been into Kenyon Sadiq if Sadiq were to fall. And even dating back to the combine, even like Matthew Berry's like fantasy article, like the one thing that was known, like it is known at the combine, was that the Steelers were interested in wide receivers. They've clearly done a lot of homework there. So I'm gonna stick with that, especially considering I think it was yesterday I tweeted about I think the beat writer there in Pittsburgh was Nick. I forgot his name, started with an F, but he kind of reminded me of this connection between Kirk Cignetti and his brother. Apparently, he's the Indiana coach. His brother apparently coaches with the Steelers now, and then the wide receivers coach for the Steelers apparently recruited Cooper at Indiana. That was enough connection for me to be like, okay, he's within the range. It's a team need. He can play within the slot, which is substantial because you have Metcalf and Pittman on the outside there, and they don't really have a lot of slot play. So you have Cooper, who's able to go in the slot. You have connections there. It fits the range. It fits the need. And it fits the win now approach, right? Like if they're banking on Rodgers coming back, then they need like all the pass catchers there. So to me, this is one that my confidence level is higher than other picks in this area, I would say.
Yeah, I like that. I went with I had Vega Ione there for Pittsburgh. I do think one of these like swing tackle guards is in play for them too, but I think you make a good compelling case for Cooper. Scott, what do you think here about Pittsburgh?
I think they would love Ione if he were to fall down here, but I don't think that's going to end up happening. I think when you start to look at it, there's 3 players based upon how those boards fall that I would consider. Jerry Dulac has kind of pushed back a little bit on offensive line being what they're going to target early. I think they're clearly going to be looking for either that wide receiver position or safety. I think McNeil Warren is in play here as a safety. But I have right now, my feel is that it's Omar Cooper. They've done a little bit more meeting with Boston, but look, the ends that they have on Cooper wouldn't require them to go ahead and have another top 30 visit. I think Cooper, the other thing you start to look at is he's built differently than the other 2 receivers they have in Pittman and DK Metcalf. So he can work out of that slot a little bit more, give them some run after the catch. And if they're in quarterback limbo right now, if they're going to entice Rodgers back for one more year, I tend to think they're going to do that with a wide receiver over a safety. So I think that's the route that I'm going to go. And you start to look at, the new coaching staff and what they've done in the past. I just tend to lean with Omar Cooper here.
Yeah, I don't see safety at all. I really don't. Looking at the roster, yeah, I think it's offensive line or receiver. I think that Cooper is a compelling argument. Connor, I'll let you get the click. You can throw in a.
I have Cooper. So you guys already
Cooper.
nailed it.
Done.
Cooper's it. Yeah.
22 is interesting. I've kind of been leaning one way and now I'm kind of leaning the other. Scott, I'll let you get this one started. Feels like a team that definitely needs, I think, some trench work. You think about how bad the offensive line was last year. That makes a ton of sense to me. This could feel like a team that could maybe not care about Mesidor's age either. That would make some sense. Or if you wanted to sell me on them liking DJ Parker or something like that too. But I think offensive line makes more and more sense for the Chargers. I'm not sure where you're at, Scott.
Look, I like Chase Basanis. He's a player that they've met with. I think he meets what Harbaugh wants in offensive line. The offensive line was the Achilles heel of that team last year. You have all the injuries. I just think they're looking to build up and make that identity, with the run and go ahead and protect the quarterback and let this offense go. TJ Parker has been the other player here. And look, I think the Chargers are an outside, dark horse for Malachi Lawrence. I think they need an edge defender with some juice to go ahead and add to that defense. I think there's going to be a time here coming up, at this point in the draft where Lawrence has more juice than what these other defensive ends left on the board have. And there comes a point where he has to come off. Right now, I think Ione, if he fell to here, he would be in play. With that being said, I think I'd go Chase Basanis. But it's not a strong, feeling. I think, it's based more upon the injuries and the downfall that team had last year. So I would kind of lean towards Basanis. But look, if you gave me a compelling argument for Lawrence or even a TJ Parker, I could go with that as well.
Would you go Basantis over Lumu, for instance? A little bit more versatility that can, kick out to the outside if need be.
I've seen that here and there lately, but I just think with what you look at as far as the interior part and how that just fell apart, I just think Basanis is a little bit more geared in towards playing that guard.
Yeah, they've addressed, or at least have thrown some resources at guard at failed tackle prospects, right? They've brought in Trevor Penning and R.I.P. Cole Strange, former Patriot first round pick at guard. So yeah, you could sell me on either of those things. Definitely think it's a good home for Lawrence too. Nick, any thoughts on the Chargers?
Yeah, I mean, we can't talk about the Chargers without mentioning like the massive need for defensive line. I am agreeing with Scott in the respect that I've kind of shifted sales there, where now I think offensive line might be the play there over defensive line, even though plenty of Chargers fans would argue DL is a bigger need with, all these old guys there like Dupree and Khalil Mack and Dalvin Tomlinson there, and just a lot of them entering contract years and well above 30. But I do think D-line is an option. You mentioned Mesidor. He's somebody that I've had mocked there in the past. Right now I'm on Lomu for this, but I could see Basantis. I know Josh Norris is on Team Basantis for this pick as well, for what it's worth. But yeah, I'm on Lomu because my kind of tiebreaker, if you will, was their injuries along the offensive line last year. 51 out of 90 possible starts, like Slater and Alt combined for 4 games. And I just see that as like, okay, you have Herbert. I see that as like, we need a guy who, okay, playing guard, definitely for left guard, let's slide him in. But this will give us some versatility if one of those guys either doesn't recover from the injury well or gets re-injured. They're both coming off a major kind of surgery situations. So to me, it was kind of like an insurance policy as the tiebreaker there. But I could definitely, Basantis sounds like he would also be like really Chargers type. So I could go either way there.
Connor, let you make the click. I went offensive line, but you could sell me on defensive end as well. I mean, look, it's actually a decent day 2 defensive end group. Texas Tech kid, Romello Height, Derek Moore from Michigan, R. Mason Thomas from Oklahoma, Gabe Jackus from Illinois. Those guys all probably going like early round 2. So like there's some ability to kind of sit on some of these guys if you don't think there's a huge gap between Malachi Lawrence and some of them. And you do think there's a tail off a little bit at offensive line. I'd understand why teams would do that.
I flip-flop between Basantis and Lawrence. You guys laid out, all the arguments why. Let's go with Basantis here. I think that's what I have in my final, or I'm trending towards having that in my final mock.
To it. All right. 23 Philly. And Nick, we know Roseman likes to address the trenches. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes ahead and makes that click again. You have anything kind of off the board here for the Eagles, or what do you think they do at 23?
Trench pick for sure. That's what I'm leaning toward. I could see an outside shot of wide receiver. Maybe if they know AJ Brown's gone, maybe like a Denzel Boston makes sense. But to me, it's a situation where they want to adjust the trenches. My initial lean was, and honestly, my still lean is offense here. Lane Johnson's getting old, and they need a successor there. Their right guard's in a contract year, Steen. So there's also some issues with along the defensive line. Nolan Smith, Ebiketie is also, I think, are both in contract years, if I'm not mistaken. I could see safety maybe there, but to me, it's probably going to end up being trenches. I currently have Mesidor plugged in here because they're kind of in win now mode, so they might overlook the age. But how he's going to stick close to kind of the consensus board, take a player who falls. This is kind of right where a lot of experts have Mesidor going. I could also see them going offensive line here. My confidence levels kind of in terms of particular player matches here is lower than other teams in the area.
Yeah. I think Emmanuel McNeil-Warren's kind of sneaky here, but I would lean offensive line. But I think this is actually a pretty viable out for McNeil-Warren. But Scott, do you have any leans on Philly?
Yeah, I think wide receiver was interesting to me, but the more I look at it, I feel like they've prepared themselves for the AJ Brown situation with Dontavian Wicks trade. I think they would maybe be comfortable. You'd basically be running out there with Hollywood Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dontavian Wicks. A few years ago, Dontavian Wicks was thought to have upside. He's kind of got washed out there in Green Bay, and now he's found a new home. Look, the player that I keep hearing, and there's two guys along that offensive line that I think make a lot of sense, and one that they've met with is the kid from Arizona State, Ian Achor. I don't know that this is too early for them, but when I start to look at it, look, Jordan Mailata was a project, and he paid off for him. Howie Roseman generally is forward thinking. This guy might need some seasoning, for a year. Maybe they can play him at guard. Maybe next year is his year when he moves out to tackle. But like the people that have worked this kid out seem to have rave reviews about him. I think Howie Roseman is forward thinking enough that this might fit him. And then the other player that I think you would look at would be Blake Miller, who, Mr. Iron Man there. I think he never missed a practice or something with Clemson. A bigger guy, 6'7". I think he's, had a ton of starts and experience there. I think he's another player that could also fit and maybe slide in and maybe play a little bit more quickly. But that's kind of where I lean. I would tend, based upon the buzz that Ian Achor has had, I would tend to lean a little bit more towards them. They've met with him. But it's not a team that I'm set in stone with a strong feel for.
Yeah, I put Mad Max there, Connor. But yeah, I mean, you can sell me on any of these three remaining, I guess, offensive tackles at the top.
Let's go with Max then. I like Max. I have him in my mid to late first round, right in this range. Makes a lot of sense. Also agree with Paulino. Appreciate you hanging out. AJ Brown trade's happening. Yeah, it seems to be like a foregone conclusion at this point. They also seem to, like everyone's saying, they feel good about Dontavian Wicks and everyone there. Yeah, coming to you, Noonan. I mean, I think that's a joke that you feel good about Dontavian Wicks and Hollywood Brown. I mean, that's just like, it's going to be like literally like, I mean, Jalen Hurts throwing to those guys is just going to be hilarious to watch. I mean, it's going to be incredible. So
you got to get offensive lineman to establish the hell out of it,
Yeah, and maybe that's the better way to win, probably than Jalen Hurts throwing to a good player, so that'll be interesting.
We gave Carnell Tate to the Browns, our first selection. They're on the clock again at 24. Didn't do any Browns trades. Feels like, Scott, offensive line would be our need, right? We're kind of just figuring out which one we wanted to do first. Here we are with a couple still on the board, unless you want to go different.
No, look, the only caveat I will say is that the Browns have been another one of those teams that has been heavily connected and interested in Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. I think he would be the dark horse here. But look, we've talked about it, and it'd be in, offensive tackle and wide receiver in some way, shape, or form. We've already got Tate. So I think this is where Caleb Lumo comes into play. He's the guy that I think would make the most sense based upon this board.
Yeah, I'll times two on the Emmanuel McNeil Warren thing. I think it's viable as a sneaky spot for him. But yeah, I like Lumo here too. Nick, any pushback? Any Browns thoughts?
No pushback. I'll third what y'all are saying about EMW, and I'll just mention that in terms of like mocking strategy. I mean, Lomu, his top 30 visits, if you're looking at that as a factor, a puzzle piece in this equation here, it's like the Chargers, 22, the Eagles 23, the Browns 24, I believe, the Bears at 25. And so basically this is kind of right in the middle of his range. So I like it from a mocking perspective.
I like it. Lock it in, Connor. 25 to the Bears. Tricky ones has been kind of Emmanuel McNeil-Warren chalk-ish, though the market doesn't reflect that, as we touched on last time. Let me see if it's moved at all, because the Bears were chalk. Yeah, I mean, safety plus 270 for the Bears to go defensive line edge is a minus 130. Which you can, interesting. That's all. So not sure what we want to do here, but I'm good with either Emmanuel McNeil-Warren if you guys had an edge rusher there, or if you wanted to go off the board. Scott, any thoughts on what the Bears would do here?
Look, I'm going to go ahead and defer to Connor on this one. You guys are up in Chicago. That's more your local area. I know Connor's had some connections in the past. Lately, what I've been hearing, I've kind of had Emmanuel McNeil-Warren here, but I've heard a lot towards TJ Parker and maybe even a Caden McDonald being in play for Chicago. Those are kind of, what's been getting floated around. Like I said, I'll defer to see if Connor's got any more information on anything he's heard.
I haven't heard much, but I feel pretty good about one of TJ Parker, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. A lot of the local people here are talking, and that's where they seem to be going. Those two guys both very much seem to be Ryan Poles guys. So I'm basically just been alternating between one of them. It's gonna be a coin flip for who I choose in my mock, to be honest.
Yeah. I left last mock. I left Emmanuel McNeil-Warren out, which was tough. But I did have TJ Parker in there. Kind of like the way it flows for the back end a little bit better the other way. But again, that's just me making a mock and not anything that's predictive.
I don't know where Emmanuel McNeil-Warren goes otherwise. That's the problem.
That's kind of the thing here is if he gets past Chicago at 25, the outs are pretty thin beyond the Bears, right? We've kind of laid out some. We've kind of laid out ahead of him, but no, I really don't think. Again, considering what Miami needs, no, the Bills aren't. Bills have made some other moves at the position. I don't think that would surprise me a little bit, I guess, but I don't know. I don't see a lot of homes for him after that.
I think I might just mock him there then because I want him in the first round somewhere. I just don't know. Maybe that's a bad way to look at it, but I'm probably just going to put him there for my mock just because otherwise
Buffalo brought in CJ Gardner-Johnson, Geno Stone. They have, Cole Bishop, who they used an early second round on in 24. They really liked apparently Jordan Hancock, who was injured at the start of the last year, but was starting in the playoffs for them last year. So I don't feel like they look at their team and go, hey, we massively need to, on top of Geno Stone and CJ Gardner-Johnson, we need another safety in the first round. So that would surprise me.
Would New England, I vaguely heard that they may have some interest. I know they brought in Kevin Byard, but
I think they like Craig Woodson too.
Yeah.
They took last year in the early day 2. I don't know. I mean, they do use 3 a good deal. So you could sell me on that. But I think there are other pressing needs.
Yeah.
I vote we go Warren then. Just make this easy.
Let's do it.
All right. McNeil-Warren. Done.
All right, Buffalo 26. This is obviously a ready to win now team in a lot of ways. They have a pretty good roster. They've obviously have made some additions in the secondary that you just kind of laid out. They also added D. Alford at nickel. They used the first round pick on Max Harrison last year. They have Christian Benford on the other outside corner. They've added Bradley Chubb. I still think you can get away with some defensive line help. To me, you look at this roster, it has a gaping hole in the middle. This team, you could run all over this team last year. They dealt with some injuries up front. Some of those guys are back. But this team desperately needs a linebacker. This is where I'm mocking Jacob Rodriguez. If you wanted to make a case for, again, a defensive end, I could see it too, but this is Jacob Rodriguez's home.
What about like Lawrence or a Messidor here? Any interest in either?
Yeah, Scott, what do you think?
I've kind of been leaning back and forth. Look, Buffalo doesn't have anybody like Lawrence, but I tend to have been leaning in towards the middle of that defense getting shored up, whether that's, with Noonan kind of starting to sell me a little bit more on Rodriguez, and then Rodriguez in the news getting, some buzz on the back end. I think some teams are going to just gravitate towards what he offers and the way he reads things. And then the other player, that you maybe start to look at would be like Caden McDonald, although I tend to like him a little bit more towards like Houston. So I can be sold on Rodriguez. I could also be sold on them, taking a guard of some sort, for the offensive line. I think this is a team that has had a lot of their holes covered by just having Josh Allen. The other player that I will throw out here, they have done a lot of homework on Boston. I think one of these wide receivers, whether it's Casey Concepcion or, another guy, I think they could be in play. So I think this team has a lot more holes than what people like tend to realize. So I can be sold a number of different routes. I haven't had them locked down yet, but I think, I don't mind Rodriguez. I don't mind like Caden McDonald. And then if you want to tell me it's going to be Denzel Boston, Stevie Johnson is working with Keon Coleman and seems to think that they haven't given up on him. So, I don't know what Nick has to say.
Similar sentiment there. Malachi Lawrence is a player that's high on my board for them. TJ Parker as well. Along those, they're changing schemes. Like I agree with you, Scott, that they like wide receivers definitely in play despite DJ Moore there. A lot of fans just think, oh, well, they traded up so much for DJ Moore, they're not going to take a wide receiver. But I don't know. I think some of the reasons they had to make all these moves is because they weren't satisfied with the offense, right? So I don't think they see DJ Moore as like this savior there. Like, okay, we're set with DJ Moore and Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman, right? So, yeah, I think KC Concepcion, Omar Cooper, if he falls, in play. Mesidor's in play if he falls. TJ Parker, Caden McDonald, Lawrence. It's just a lot of names there, right? And then now we're throwing Rodriguez into the mix. Thanks, Ryan. But yeah, I could go in a number of different directions here. So whatever, they all make sense to me. In my mock, I have Parker, but part of that's just strategic based on kind of wanting to slot him right near the Bears. I could also end up seeing me kind of finalize either Malachi Lawrence or Akeem Mesidor there. A tiebreaker would probably be defense, just because I think it was so atrocious last year. And they're changing schemes. That's another thing. When you change the whole scheme, they bring in Jim Leonard. They're switching to a 3-4. When you change schemes, you need personnel to kind of like match that kind of stuff. So my tiebreaker is toward defense.
Yeah, some of the local, people that are tied into the Bills stuff that I've read feels like they would lean edge over interior, because I was also kind of Caden McDonald early in the process, but I think edge would make a little more sense. I've played my hand here, Connor. I'm going to let you make the click on whatever you want to do for the Bills. Here is our DJ on the ones and twos. Let's go. I'm telling you guys, kid's fun to watch football. About 4-1, 5-1 still out there on Jacob Rodriguez to be first round pick. So
I'm probably going to go Messidor or a defensive lineman, but I hear the case and you love him. So why not? Let's do that. 27. I like Concepcion. If you guys are interested in that at all, they need more juice as wide receiver. They could go a variety of directions, but Concepcion makes sense.
Easy click for me. I've been, taking receiver there a lot, and 6 for them, for Cleveland, which has given me Concepcion a lot at 24, but him being available for the Niners makes a ton of sense. 27, if he's easy click.
Yeah, I like Concepcion. I have him a little bit higher. I think Malachi Lawrence is maybe another landing spot here for San Francisco who could use an edge rusher, but I think you're going to have some teams that are higher on Concepcion and his upside, and think that maybe they can fit the drops. I think, look, when you have Mike Evans, that's a 1, maybe 2 year max fix. And, I think Concepcion, you start to look at it, I think Kyle Shanahan could get the most out of him.
Yep. Let's do it. Keep it moving. Wrap this up here. Dinner time. We got snacks, but we got to get dinner now.
Yeah. From coffee to snacks to dinner.
Yeah.
We're bringing everyone through the whole thing, though. I mean, well, what do you guys want to do here? Like some offensive line for the Texans, I think makes sense. And I've seen Caden McDonald there. I kind of got off of it. Blake Miller could be interesting here. I don't know. Pregnon.
Yeah. I like offensive line or actually I'm warming up to the Caden McDonald thing again. But Nick, do you have any thoughts on Houston?
Yes, definitely. I've been following kind of Lance Zierlein. He seems to suggest that they're also probably leaning into our offensive line there. Might be someone they trade down for, maybe a Ty Simpson trading spot there, not to complicate things because we're in a rush. But this is kind of in my notes on my spreadsheet. It's like, okay, if I'm going to do the trade out spot, it's here, right, based on the history. But also, but right now I have Blake Miller there. perfect character fit. I think he gives some flexibility along the offensive line. They can plug and play him at right tackle, and then they can move maybe Braden Smith, who they just acquired at left guard. There's some rumors about that. I just think he kind of completes the offensive line for now, and he's a good character fit. And I even kind of Lance Zierlein, who I rely on this kind of pick for, I even kind of tweeted at him yesterday, and he said that he would be a fit. He's had a 30 visit there as well. I just think it's in his ranges, I guess. It's a nice marriage here in Houston.
I like it. Connor, click that. Blake Miller. We'll lock that one up.
Boom.
29, Kansas City. What do? We do Ruben Bain last time?
This is it. You need to go McCoy.
This is it. McCoy.
They would take the risk.
Javon McCoy and Ruben Bain is just, I mean, nuts on the table, like from Kansas City. I mean, that is awesome. Are you open to that? All right.
Love it.
I think that's great.
Yeah. I think it's what I did put out yesterday too. So that would make a ton of sense. I think he right here, 29, 30 are his landing spots because Miami can afford to take a red shirt year from McCoy too. If he just so happens to not be fully healthy, but with him off the board, things get a little bit trickier for sure. We went Spencer Fanu there. Scott, any thoughts on Miami at 30? Again, having a ton of needs.
Look, they've got a ton of needs. I think we've got two players here that would fit with them in Akeem Mesidor or Denzel Boston. I could see them going either one. Mesidor is a little bit older prospect, but would give him a little bit of juice on offensive line. Also a Miami guy. Look, they've got nothing. Absolutely nothing.
They can't do Mesidor though, right? Because by the time they're competitive, Mesidor is 30.
Absolute dog shit is what they have at the wide receiver core. So I'm going to vote Denzel Boston. They need a wide receiver. I think he's fallen a little bit in this situation with us. So he's going to get my vote.
Boston. All right. Let's do it.
I like Ryan's point that he's old and it's Waddle. Sorry, Connor. I don't know if I interrupted you. I can't hear you, but I like the point that they just traded Waddle for that exact reason because of timeline thing. So Denzel Boston there, a corner like Colton Hood or something like that. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah,
Noonan, you're making this pick. Who do you want?
Malachi Lawrence.
Oh, all right, Malachi Lawrence.
I didn't try to talk you guys off of him for as long as possible, but I would love to see a situation where Malachi Lawrence falls to New England. He's a fit for what they need. Stylistically, he's a fit for what they need. And I'm very, 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 very high on the prospects. And again, probably not a early down contributor. Brelly probably plays 45, 50% of the snaps in year one. They need to replace the K'Von Chaisson role, and that's the same exact role. Clear passing downs, go out and win, and he's a huge fit. So love that one.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, Malachi Lawrence is a guy I'm going to have in my first round, but now we're in a tricky spot. We have Mesidor, Parker, Hood, Simpson, all guys that I am going to have probably in my first round or on the fringe. I'm gonna have this as Cardinals trading in for Simpson on my final.
Just do it. We're gonna end up having to clip this and share the mock anyway. People will love that we went ahead and did that.
Yeah, let's see.
We'll count for Simpson.
How do we do this? We got
Cardinals.
Yeah, right there.
Oh, there you go. Okay, and then we'll just give them like I don't know.
Second and a seventh.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, done. Arizona Cardinals. Ty Simpson.
Done. Clip it.
Mid-draft. Shared image. Oh man, this is beautiful. Look at
Copy that up. Boom.
How do I download this? Share image. Wow, this is gorgeous. We killed it.
Awesome. We appreciate everyone hanging out with us for currently 2 hours and 22 minutes. Nick, I want to give you the floor. Where can everyone find your stuff? I know we're still 6 days away, and you're going to have a ton of information and content for the people to find here. So where can everyone find your stuff?
Yes, I will. Thank you so much. And for having me on today, guys, at Fantasy Law Guy on Twitter, and then fantasylawguy.com is the website.
Love it. Definitely check it out. Find Nick on Twitter. Again, just fantastic. Go back and look at previous threads, and it's got just anything draft related that you would possibly have missed if you've been asleep for the last couple of months. Nick's Twitter can catch you up very, very quickly. Highly recommend that. Actually, absolutely pounding the pavement for us. A must follow. Definitely check that out. So subscribe to the channel here, 4for4 Live. That way you don't miss a show. We'll be back, I don't know, 2 or 3 times next week too for more draft content. Turn the screws here as we get closer. Final mocks have to be submitted on Wednesday. I'm sure we'll come in on Thursday to share what our final boards will look like. But again, we'll be doing some shows earlier in the week too. So make sure you hit the like on the video. For some reason you made it this far, toss us a like. We would definitely appreciate it. And again, subscribe so you don't miss any of the other 4for4 content. Connor, Nick, Scott, I'm Ryan. We'll see y'all next time. Thanks, everybody.